against Monare. Director William Bird says anyone who tries to undermine media freedom must be held accountable.
It cannot be right that just ahead of elections, instead of focusing on the electoral coverage, the head of news is having to subject himself to dealing with attacks by the state security agency on his integrity. There's no legitimate reason why this should occur. It doesn't occur to any editor anywhere in the country, nor should it occur to any editor anywhere else in the country. So why should the head of the SABC be any different?
In other news, the Senzo Mayua murder trial has adjourned until tomorrow for the defense to be furnished with more documents pertaining to cell phone evidence. 5 men are on trial at the High Court in Pretoria for the murder of Mayua, who was shot and killed in 2014. Cell phone data analyst Gideon Gous is expected to be cross-examined by the defense. However, the defense counsel Thulani Mgomezulu has requested more time to go through the documents they've received thus far.
What will not be sufficient?
The time for consultation with our clients, because we will receive this information or these documents today. Then tomorrow, when they come at 9:30, the time will not be sufficient enough for consultation.
Moving to KZN, Umlazi residents in Durban have dispersed after this morning's service delivery protest. Residents blocked roads. This delayed motorists on their way to work and learners from travelling to school. Police spokesperson Robert Nechiwunda.
Police officers from the Public Order Policing and other police units have managed to contain the protest action by residents of P and Q sections in Umlazi who had blockaded major roads this morning. Residents were reportedly protesting against shortage of water and other basic services. No violent activities were reported.
Further afield, Moscow says Russian forces have advanced at points along the front line in Ukraine, taking a village in the Donetsk region. Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine more than 2 years ago. Russia controls about 18% of Ukraine in the east and south. It has been gaining ground since the failure of Kiev's 2023 counteroffensive to make any serious inroads against well-entrenched Russian troops. The Western Ukraine said they will not rest until Russian forces are defeated. But Moscow says it will achieve all its aims in what it calls the special military operation in Ukraine. Lastly, more than 100 KFC restaurants in Malaysia are reported to have temporarily closed because of a boycott linked to Israel's attack on Gaza. Many people in Malaysia, which has a large Muslim population, believe the U.S. fast food chain has connections with Israel. They are boycotting KFC to show their support for the Palestinians. Recapping the top story this hour, Presidency spokesperson Vincent Makwenya has disputed reports that SABC head of news Moshweshwe Monare is being targeted ahead of the 29th May general elections. Headlines at 3:30 for SAFM News. I am Dino Mutaung.
And coming up in your sports this hour, Rivero tips Patrick Maswangai for football of the season, and Van Heerden brings calmness to excited junior box squad. More details at 3:30.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more, just to be the one who buys your car. Will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We buy cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Molweni babukeli beKids Newsroom, igama lam ngumhlonto Buhle Kelepa, izwakazi yasemampondomiseni, and we cannot wait to see you on SABC2 right here where you belong every single Monday at 4:30. See you there.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
So, do you know today, 29th of April, means we're exactly 1 month to to the elections, just 1 month. So the question is are you ready? Is the IEC ready? Are the police that ensures safety and security is in place? Are they ready? Are the political parties ready? Are the voters ready in deciding where they're going to vote, and everything else around it? Are we all ready? Are you ready for the outcome of what happens after May 29? And here's an important point, because in the period building up to that very first election, 27th of April 1994, there was so much talk about what's going to go wrong. And as we know, it was the most exciting and the dullest of elections, because the foreign media packed up after a few days when they realized this place is safe because the elections are free and fair. Now, no election is perfect, but the question, and I think the responsibility for every one of us, is to find a way that, however we agree and disagree, to work together so that the day after May 29th, we work together to do what we always should be doing, which is building a nation where we can maximize our fullest potential. Effectively, the nation of our dreams, and the nation that all the peoples of the world want to see as the example of how to run a country. Do we do it right now? Obviously not. That's why an election is a barometer to put in place. But the question to all of us then, are we ready? I'm Ashraf Garda, and that's my point. And indeed, that's the big question. Are we ready? Just how ready are we? We'll talk about that. This is the National Pulse. A lot to talk about over the next 3 hours. And you can engage with me on a range of issues. You know that. You can connect with me via WhatsApp, in text, or in voice form. And you can also call in as well. All those options available. You can do that right away.
No. I've heard on the radio stations, they're not filling vacancies. There is no money.
No, but that's my question to you. If they don't have the money, will a doctor work for Mahala?
Give me a chance. I'm going to give you a reason.
No. I'm asking you. I need to challenge your position.
No. Nobody works for free.
Right now, the National Pulse is boiling over.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda. The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
All right, well, perhaps you can share your own experiences of how long it'll take for you to get ready to make your final decision about voting in the election. Because between now and a month, there are conversations we're going to have on this show, The National Pulse. There are conversations throughout SAFM, radio, television, newspapers, online, on the social media spaces. We're all having conversations, and really the political parties are in some way, well, not in some way, they clearly are, doing whatever they can to effectively pitch to you and me so that we can give them our votes. And therefore my question to you, and I'd love you to share that right away, is what sort of conversations are you having around the party you're going to vote for? I don't need to know which party you're voting for, but you probably pinned it down to 3 parties. What are you talking about, and who are you talking to about those 3 parties that will get down to one party finally on come election day? So you know the numbers to call in. It's 086 000 2032, and then WhatsApp in voice or text form 0614 104 107, and you can certainly tweet us as well on the X platform using that all-important hashtag, the National Pulse. Right, we know there's election time when there are conversations being had around possible monitoring or targeting of the SABC News by state security. It's rather disturbing, but I'm sure I need to know more, and you certainly need to know more. I know the presidency has come out with some comment about it, but let's get to first things first and get the whole story around it, right? We're talking specifically around the SABC's Group Executive for News and Current Affairs, Moshweshe Monare, right? But let's, however, try and understand more about it with William Bird, Director of Media Monitoring Africa. William, goodness, we haven't chatted on air in a long time. You have the same position. Hi.
Good to hear from you again, Asha.
Yeah, William, sorry, I just lost you. You are there, right? Yeah?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Right, great to connect. Let's say you have the same position. Right, let's get to the story firstly, in terms of What is the issue, and is this an issue that we should be concerned about? It's concern enough for us to make it as our top story at the opening of the show.
So it is a worry, because effectively what you've got is the State Security Agency saying that they need to conduct a higher level of security vetting of the head of news, the editor-in-chief of the public broadcaster. No other editor in the country has to go through security vetting. It is absolutely mind-boggling that the editor-in-chief of the SABC should have to go through that. Now, the way they're getting around that is they're saying that, well, it's because he's a group executive and therefore they need to make sure that they do this. Now, what they did do with Patricia Magopeni and indeed with Ashraf Garda is that they expected them to complete various forms, some form of vetting. Now, to begin with, I don't think that that's appropriate. The way that the SSA is justifying this for everyone is that there's something called the Critical Infrastructure Act. That's replaced the National Key Points Act, which was an apartheid piece of legislation. And effectively what this Critical Infrastructure Act deals with is it says if there are places that are of national importance, so like, sanitation works, power stations, it's essential that the security personnel and the people that are running those things are vetted in this way. Now, for the SABC particularly, it refers specifically to security personnel. So to begin with, the editor-in-chief of the SABC is not security personnel, so he shouldn't be expected to complete the vetting. To make matters worse, what's happened is that 2 years into the job, they got hold of him, as we understand from the reporting in the City Press yesterday, they got hold of him to say, actually, you need to complete not just this vetting, but a higher level, and that includes a polygraph test. Now, what we've heard the presidency say just earlier today is that this is because Mr. Monari didn't want to agree originally to a polygraph test. I mean, I think that it's just outrageous that the department would say this and that they'd wait 2 years to be doing this. So the timing of this is very, very suspicious indeed. And just overall, the idea that you'd need to vet the editor-in-chief is just an egregious intrusion on the editorial independence of the SABC.
Right. Now, I mean, this is not, the SABC was not born yesterday, and neither has Democratic South Africa. So has this happened in previous elections?
So what has happened in previous elections was with the previous editor-in-chief, Patricia Magopeni, who's now on the board. She had to complete some forms for security vetting, which she did, and there was no issue with that. What Mr. Monari did, as I understand it, is he also completed those forms. But what hasn't happened before is that they're coming out with this nonsense of that you need a higher clearance, that you need to do a polygraph test, and some 2 years into the job. So as far as we're aware, this is certainly a first, and certainly something that we should be deeply and profoundly outraged and concerned about.
Okay, what are you concerned about?
Well, I think the thing is no editor has to go through and be security vetted. What is the purpose of that? It sounds like it's a means of intimidating the editor-in-chief, a means of saying we're watching you, expecting him to complete a polygraph test. That seems to suggest some kind of incident or idea of wrongdoing. Ordinarily, why would you ask someone to do a lie detector test? Unless you've got some kind of a hearing or some other process that you may possibly find that for, it's just outrageous. So this kind of thing is designed to have a chilling effect on media freedom. For that to happen to the head of news at the public broadcaster, which is the biggest broadcaster in the country, for it to happen to that same head of news 4 weeks ahead of elections is very, very fishy indeed, and it's just something that is profoundly worrying for our democracy. You know, the head of news and everyone at SABC should be focused on how do we deliver, free, fair, accurate, credible coverage of elections, not, should or shouldn't the head of news be subjected to security vetting. It's just ridiculous.
Now, I mean, I understand that the presidency, the office that is, has issued a statement. What do you understand by the statement they've just made?
Well, they seem to be suggesting, according to Mr. Magwenyu, who gave the briefing earlier, that it's because the vetting was never completed. Now, it's an astonishing thing that if he went 2 years in, that it's taken him this long to work out that, his vetting hasn't been completed. But it's also equally astonishing to be suggesting that he was asked to do a polygraph test at the very start of this, which if we had known about that when he was appointed, we would have objected vehemently to that as well. Again, expecting vetting of journalists is just something that runs exactly opposite to what you want in a democratic country that supports media freedom. So what we need from the presidency, far from inventing bumbling nonsense like this, is to demand from them to say on what basis was this new instruction given for a polygraph test, who gave that instruction, and how are they going to be disciplined? And we want them then to commit clearly and unambiguously to this. They can't use the excuse that it's because he's group executive of news when he's the editor-in-chief of the SABC. That's his role at the SABC. Using executive is just playing around with words to try and deny the fact that what they're trying to do is vet and undermine the independence of the editor-in-chief of the SABC.
So let me use a different word instead of vet and undermine. We are in election season. Information is contested territory in terms of outflow of information. Is the SABC contested territory to the point where political parties would see that if they are able to influence SABC's policy in terms of news, that's a major catch? I mean, is that not the biggest concern?
Yeah, clearly, and that's why the SABC has very clear editorial policies. It's why the SABC has an election plan. It's why the SABC is one of the broadcasters subscribed to the Broadcast Complaints Commission and to the CCC in an election period. There are regulations that specifically deal with party coverage and party election broadcasts. For our own part, we're monitoring the SABC. So there's ICASA that's monitoring, we're monitoring. So let me tell you, if SABC steps out of line and they start to unduly favour or unduly disfavour any political party or entity, we'll know about it and we'll be the first to shout out about it. But that's a fundamentally different thing to suggesting that it's okay to vet and effectively surveil the editor-in-chief.
Yeah. Are you therefore impressed by the SABC's response? And even in my previous journey with the SABC, and we've had many chats, right? There's been so many issues around what the SABC can and can't do. In its current iteration, are you impressed by the SABC's very public response? It's effectively saying hands off.
Well, I think that they need to be clear and stronger about that, and certainly it is testament to just how far the SABC has come. When you're getting political parties from all sides saying, we don't like this and we think it's unfair, that's probably a good thing, especially when it comes to the SABC, and we are seeing, and historically for the last 7 years or so, we've seen a public broadcaster that is wanting to assert its independence. It's always going to be contested territory. Which is why when these kinds of things happen, you need the Department of Communication and Digital Technologies and the presidency to also say, hey, hands off the editor-in-chief. This is not appropriate. Whoever's responsible, we'll identify them and we'll take action against them because this is not okay.
So, lastly, what would you like to see happen next?
What we'd like to see is an open, honest conversation from state security and the minister and the presidency saying, this is how this occurred, this is the person behind it, and this is the action we're taking against them. And we give our undertaking that this will not be, that no editor-in-chief now or in future will be subjected to the same kinds of ridiculous and offensive vetting procedure. It's not necessary, it's unconstitutional, and, if they persist with this, we will be taking them to court.
Okay, and that's where we can leave it. The first salvo on this issue, William Bird, Director of Media Monitoring Africa, and you have your thoughts on this, the issue of state security effectively doing a double check on the SABC's head of news. That's how significant it is. Do you want to comment on that? I'm sure you do have strong views on it. Just tell me what it is that you want to say. 086 000 2032, or you can WhatsApp in text or voice note form 0614 104 107. And do not forget, if you are tweeting out, do tag on the X platform, SAFM Radio, and do tag me, Ashraf Garda, but the same on Facebook too, okay? And use the hashtag The National Pulse. We'll talk about Niger and troops vacating Niger, U.S. troops, that is, in a moment.
Keeping up with your TV license balance inquiries is now simpler than ever. No more waiting in queues. No more phone calls. Just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 and secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
So Archbishop Desmond Tutu was vilified by the apartheid government and had his passport confiscated. We know that, right? But he kept struggling for freedom, and after voting in the first democratic election in 1994, he said it felt so good, it was like falling in love. On May the 29th, the Kagiso Trust Remember Me initiative encourages South Africans to honour Tutu's memory by exercising the right he fought so hard for, the right to vote.
Freedom Month on SAFM, the month in which we had our first democratic election 30 years ago. This Freedom Month, as we reflect on the progress made thus far, we continue to commemorate the selfless sacrifices made for our democracy and freedom. SAFM, leading the conversation. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
By the way, have you been listening to the IFP election campaign? Because it's election season, all the parties want you to vote for. Have you been listening to that advert, and particularly the fact that the urging you to vote has come from the former leader, the late leader of the IFP, Dr. Mangosuthu Buthelezi. We'll talk about implications of that from a marketing and penetration point of view, not quite now, later on. Well, let's now talk about what's happening in Niger right now. The United States and Niger discussing plans to withdraw American troops from that nation. It's not yet formal, big issues around that. And we thought... in fact, if you look at the entire Sahel region, right, there's been massive disruption. And the one thing in common with all those countries is, and predominantly French-speaking countries, former French colonies, many of them, wanting those colonies out and the level of influence out. So what does this all mean, okay? Let's speak to Dr. Olayinka Ajala, who's the senior lecturer in politics and international relations and director of the African Research Initiative. That's at the Beckett University in Leeds. Dr. Ayala, good chatting to you, and you're live now on the National Pulse.
Yeah, hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Okay, so help us understand what's the issue here with a plan to have the American troops being planned to withdraw. What's the story?
Thank you. So the story is about the military junta in Niger asking the U.S. military to leave the country. So this came after a couple of months after the coup in Niger, which happened in July 2023. So if we recall, last year, a few months after the coup, they had the French military to leave, and this also resulted in France closing their embassy in Niger. At that time, they did not tell the U.S. to leave, so they still maintain the level of relationship with the U.S. and with the U.S. military, especially around the drone base in Niger, which has been very useful for the United States. So recently, they also asked the U.S. military to leave, and earlier this month, we also woke up to the news of Russian forces or Russian military entering and setting up equipment in Niger for the first time.
What then is the motivation behind the withdrawal, and then you've suggested Russians could enter?
There are a couple of things. I think the first one was the fact that the U.S. until October 2023 did not label this a coup. And the reason why the U.S. did not label it a coup was because constitutionally, the U.S. would be obliged to withdraw some funding and a level of support to the Nigerian government. But after a lot of deliberation. In October, the U.S. labeled this a coup, and then withdrew most of the military support to the country. But more importantly, the U.S. also stopped sharing intelligence with the Nigerian government, and this, I think, was a big problem, because the question being asked in the country was, if you are not going to give us intelligence, so what is the point of having you in the country? So that was a very big issue for the Nigerian junta. And then also there was Russia also lurking in the corner, trying to build a stronger relationship with Niger. So this, you can label it as a direct swap. Swapping one major power for another.
Yeah, but isn't that strange? I mean, one thing is wanting to reduce the influence of one major power for all the meddling that many argue against, right? And then replacing it with another. And how does that suit Niger?
It suits their narrative, because the argument is that the U.S. and France especially have been in the country for a very long time, and there have not been a considerable decrease in the level of insurgency. So there is a clamor by the citizens, rightly so, for the government to fight insurgency and terrorist groups in the country. And there have been a lot of issues with human rights in the past, with the U.S. and their allies refusing to supply some equipment based on perceived human rights abuses in the country. Working with Russia or even China, as the case may be, doesn't come with all these human rights conditions. So they decided to try some other allies who would give them more leeway and or maybe hopefully more weapons to be able to fight insurgencies without questions of human rights. This has been a major issue, even with Nigeria as well.
Well, I mean, to extend the conversation then to not just Niger, but beyond that, there are many countries sort of very neighbors or very close to Niger, and again, many of them former French colonies, right? And I see there's a clear agenda to basically get rid of the French colonial influence, not just in terms of army, but in terms of the currency. I mean, what do you make about, therefore, these shifts that are taking place in that region?
Well, it's a very dramatic shift over a short period of time, and it all started with the coups. So we've seen a wave of coups in Guinea, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and then more recently there was another one in Gabon. The Gabon is now officially classed as one of the Sahelian countries. But again, this the rise, the sentiment against France has been growing for about a decade now. And this is primarily due to the large number of young people, more educated young people in the region. If you look at the demography of the Sahel, the median age, the average age is 18. And these young people are more educated, they are asking questions, they have access to social media, and they are putting pressure on their governments to change their standard of living or increase their standard of living, so to say. So we've seen that wave, and there was the rhetoric that one of the reasons why they've stagnated in development is because France still has a lot of sway when it comes to this economy and security of the country. So this resulted in the anti-France sentiment, which then the military held on to and used as a justification to truncate democracies in the countries.
And that's where we will leave it. Appreciate your input and your insights that you've shared with us today. Dr. Olayinka Ajala, the Senior Lecturer in Politics and International Research, as well as Director of the African Research Initiative at the Leeds Beckett University. Make of that what you will. What do you think? You want to add to that? You tell me. Let's get the news headlines now. It's just gone 3:30 with Daneo.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. A very good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 3:30. The SABC's head of news, Moshoshwa Monare, has questioned who was the client and who made the decision that he be called to complete a polygraph test at the State Security Agency just weeks before the May 29th general elections. In other news, the deadline to submit comments on the suitability of candidates nominated for the position of Chief Justice of South Africa and Deputy President of the Supreme Court of Appeal is drawing closer. And the High Court in Johannesburg has sentenced a mother of a toddler to 25 years in prison, and her boyfriend has been handed a life imprisonment sentence. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N3 northbound in Edenvale has a crash reported at Linksfield Road. All lanes are open. In Bedfordview, the N12 R24 westbound is queuing towards the N3 north ramp at Gululis interchange, and the N3 northbound has a stationary vehicle just before Van Buren Road. The R59 southbound in Alberton is where a crash is reported just before Klip River Drive. In KZN, the N2 southbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. Umgeni Road eastbound is slow moving at Springfield Park. And on Ballet Road, the roadworks reported with traffic restrictions near Chief Albert Luthuli Hospital. In Cape Town, the N1 outbound is queuing towards Eustenburg exit. Baden-Powell Drive in Kailicha has sand patches possible at Monwabisi, so you're asked to proceed with caution. Marula Road in Kraaifontein has a crash reported. That's just south of the N1 highway, causing delays in the area. And Baden-Powell Drive has a sand patches possible between Strandfontein and Coastal Park, so proceed with caution. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Doming Kapele.
So let's start with football. And I know when it's end of season, it's not just trophies, it's awards, right?
It's awards. A very good afternoon to you and our listeners at home. As we start things off with football, well, Orlando Pirates head coach Jose Rivero says that he feels like attacker Patrick Maswangaye is among the favourites for the Football of the Season award. The attacker has been producing top performances in all competitions, winning 7 Man of the Matches awards, the most of any player in the DStv Premiership this season. Rivero believes that South Africans understand football and says Maswangaye is widely loved for the type of football that he dishes out.
I think people is in love with him. Who am I to say who the people should love or identify like player of the season? I think the South African football fans they have a good taste about football. They know the football that they want to see, and let's see. Like I said, in the end, it's important that the team is getting good results, good performances, and within that, the individuals can shine. And he's a clear candidate, but let's see.
Well, with Mamelodi Sundowns close to securing a record 7th successive league title, the Buccaneers are now in a 4-way battle for second position and a CAF Champions League spot alongside Stellenbosch FC, TS Galaxy and Skukuni United. And Rivera insists that they are only focused on themselves, with all the remaining games now a must-win affair.
Thinking ourselves, our obligation is to win each and every game until the end, and that's where we are putting the focus. Then there's nothing we can do with our opponents. They have to play their games, and we try to concentrate in the things that we can control, our performance, our next opponent. Now we're traveling to Cape Town. We have Cape Town City on Wednesday. It's going to be key again to collect the 3 ones, because the situation in the top of the table is very, very tight. So yeah, recovery, sleep well tonight, and tomorrow we go again.
Elsewhere, Real Madrid have their sights set on a La Liga and Champions League double, but to lift the latter, they must find a way past Bayern Munich, their black beast. Now, Carlo Ancelotti's side travelled to Bavaria for the semi-final first leg clash tomorrow in a fixture dubbed the European Classico, the most repeated in the competition's history. In the last decade, Madrid clearly have the edge on the German giants. The record 14-time winners knocked out Bayern in each of their 3 most recent tangles in the semi-finals in in 2014 and 2018, and the quarterfinals in 2017. In cricket, New Zealand captain Kane Williamson will play in his 6th T20 World Cup tournament with Devon Conway and Tim Southey named in their squad, alongside the 15 players selected in the tournament squad. Pace bowler Ben Sears will travel and train with the team as injury cover. Then in athletics, Elroy Geland made a return to the top of the podium at the Athletics South Africa Marathon Championships, claiming victory for the first time since 2019. The 37-year-old won the Durban International Marathon, doubling as the ASA Marathon Championships held at the Moses Mabhida Stadium. Geland shattered the course record previously held by Tebelo from Lesotho at 2 hours 10 minutes and 10 seconds with an impressive time of 2 hours 9 minutes and 32 seconds. However, unfortunately for him, he missed out on the narrow Olympic qualifying mark of 2 hours 8 minutes and 10 seconds. However, he did walk away with a 75,000 rands check. Then ending things off with women in sports. Did you know that there's an F1 Academy? And if you're asking yourself what that is all about, it's a female-only race series designed to provide a platform for women drivers to progress through the higher levels of the competition. Now, drivers compete at 7 tracks, but complete 14 races, as it has 2 races at each venue. There's 15 drivers that are split amongst 5 teams, and 10 of the teams in the Formula One competition support a driver each. And the last time a female driver was on the track, it was back in 1976. So at this stage, the competition, it's still a little bit wary on how the drivers are going to eventually graduate to F1. However, there's a lady by the name of Susie Wolf who took part in a practice session back in 2015 at the British Grand Prix, where she finished 13th out of 20 cars, and she's managing the director of the F1 Academy.
That's interesting.
Very interesting.
I mean, if you ask me which women has participated in Formula One, I wouldn't know. I would have said, actually, never. But it seems like it's been done.
Back in 1976.
For now, I'll stick with, I hope it happens. It'll be great. But Simbani, over the weekend, Friday night?
Come against Simbini.
Simbini, yeah, sorry.
Amazing. Beating Coleman.
And he was losing.
Yes, it looked like he was losing, but listen, it's not over until it's actually over.
Well, now we know. He looks in terrific form. Goodness, man. How many days to the Olympic Games? Bring it on.
It is exactly 88 days until the Olympics.
Wow.
With that said,
he needs to be there at the right time.
It's a wrap from my side. For SAFM Sport, I'm Tumin Khapele.
Freedom Month on SAFM. The month in which we had our first democratic election 30 years ago. This Freedom Month, as we reflect on the progress made thus far, we continue to commemorate the selfless sacrifices made for our democracy and freedom. SAFM, leading the conversation.
Top Sport. Fat Cats, Chair Lady, on Tabi Sendipo. Freedom Day is a big day. Why this day? Why choose to play on this day?
When the day originally came up for guys to play, they were playing on one game. They played on Human Rights Day, so it was a game between Fat Cats and Mazafios. And then I think after they finished playing, we decided that we wanted to have a game every year, but it has to be on the 27th because it just means a lot to a lot of South Africans, and we think that it's gonna mark the calendar for everyone. They'll always remember that on that specific day we have this tournament that's taking place where everyone is welcome to come and play.
Top Sport on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Okay, do you have a point of view regarding the State Security Agency wanting a polygraph test for the SABC's head of news? Any thoughts on that? Any thoughts on the conversation I had with William Burt from Media Monitoring Africa? The other point that I've made, that we are now 1 month away to the elections, and we can ask whether 10 different organizations are ready, but the question is, are you ready? What do you still need to be doing in the month to come to get you to cut down your potential vote choice from 10 to 3 to 1. If you like to share your opinions, then I certainly want to hear it. And you can do that, live on air, 086 000 2032 to engage me in a call format. But you can also WhatsApp or text me, 0614 104 107. Let's get to the callers now. To what PE we go? Mbuzi Mbuzi, yeah. How's it, man? Well, you finally got through.
Yeah.
Wait, so I have to tell. Wait, I have to tell the audience this. I mean, I got a complaint from Mbuzi because we've connected lots of times before. He's like, Ashraf, I cannot get through to call in since you've started hosting the National Pulse. Here you are. The world is your platform. Go ahead.
It's a Freedom Day miracle.
Well, there we are.
But man, look, I think the approach to this story is wrong, and here is why. The issue of vetting in the workplace starts with the employer. So when SABC advertise a post, they indicate that one of the requirements is security clearance. And if a person is appointed before being cleared, having that security clearance, there's a condition that the employment will depend on that. Two, the people that we should be hearing from is the employer to say, are they processing the security clearance application or vetting for their head of news? Yes or no? Because the manner it is projected now, it is like we're back in the apartheid where SSA would just wake up and want to vet the head of news. But it's not presented in a proper context that all executives are vetted, you do background checks, you do everything so that you make sure that the person you are appointing is the right person. Remember, before I give you for your question, the board of the SABC, remember there was a time where its appointment was delayed because they were still vetting the candidates. Now, if SSA vets the board, why is it abnormal or treated in this way when they are vetting a person who reports to the board or reports to the CEO through that?
Okay, but here's the question. I mean, who you say, and I understand. I mean, for example, many of the presenters here on freelance contracts is a very different process because, you come and you go and you do other things, including people like myself. But we're talking about senior executives here, right? There's nothing wrong with the vetting, but who should be doing the vetting? Should it be done by state security? Should it be done by government? Should it be done by the SABC board themselves? Why can't they do that?
If the SABC was a private company, they would, like other private companies, hire a private security firm to do that vetting and risk assessment and all that. But the SABC is a public broadcaster, and the board has decided that its vetting will be done by state security agencies. There is nothing untoward with SSA doing the vetting. The person who's being vetted can even keep a copy of that form. If they suspect anything, they would be able to produce that.
I'm sure he will keep a copy of the form.
Because all it requires is for you to submit your things to get security clearance so that the risk element is addressed.
Okay.
I don't think it is right to bring in the issue of elections. This has got nothing to do with elections.
But I mean,
that's why I'm saying.
Yeah, I hear you. But I mean, here's the point. Having done nothing about it for 2 years, they suddenly bring it up now a month before the elections. I mean, you can't deny the fact that then they also not being very clever. If they haven't done it for 2 years, why would they not then delay it after the elections, knowing we're going to have conversations like the type we're just having now?
Hence, the employer is the right source of information. The employer will tell you when did they start the process, what are the delays. If there are delays, they should account to that because the question you are asking will be best answered by your group CEO. And I'm sure they would be comfortable to answer that because this matter, the way it is being framed on the public discourse, is being weaponized now that the head of news is being targeted. And I don't think really he is being targeted through this vetting. I'm not saying that there are no people who disagree with this approach, but I'm just saying this we should treat carefully, get the information from the employer instead of a pressure group like the Media Monitoring Africa guys, because they are not giving you...
Okay, but hold it. I think there's one part of it. We may pursue the employer. What we certainly will do is chat to Michael Markovitz, who was the former SABC board member, and he has many thoughts on this, and we'll speak to him after 5 o'clock, so do not miss that. On the other end, good talking to. I know you and I can talk forever.
Where is the SABC board and the CEO, they should be coming.
I'll get Temba to knock on their door. Let's see what happens. Okay, Mbuzi Wekaya. There we are, talking to us now since the first time I'm hosting the National Pulse. By the way, does that get you thinking? What's the pulse rate like? Where do you fit in? What is our National Pulse feeling right now? In fact, we'll go to another issue that I think is quite interesting and significant around the IFP adverts, and we'll talk about that in a moment.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Now, you do know that all the advertising that's been done by the different political parties in the run-up to the elections is actually paid for by the political parties, right? And I've certainly had a few, certainly here on this show on SAFM. And today I heard the IFP advert. Now, what is so interesting about the IFP advert is not just their pitch, because, I mean, everybody pitches to want your vote. I get that. But they also used the voice of a person who is completely synonymous with the IFP. Now, that's not a surprise because, the ANC has often done that with former President Nelson Mandela, right? However, if the tone of the voice and the messaging coming across and the voice in this case was the former leader, Mangosuthu Buthelezi, comes across as if he's living, because he's telling us to vote now. He's not praising the party in the general past tense. So we thought, let's try and understand this. What does this mean from a marketing point of view, marketing and brand communications, that is, and certainly somebody who knows all about that is Tsepo Matseba, who's the Managing Director of Reputation First. Tsepo, good chatting to you as always. You're on the National Pulse.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Right. So did you hear the advert? What do you make of it?
I've got context about the advert. I didn't listen to it word for word, but I've got context. And the sense that I get is that it creates an impression that the person is alive and it's here and now. So the choice of words and the particular components of a clip that you select when editing to come to a final cut becomes important, because you have to give the audience an indication that this is not the person who's no longer here. It's not the same as using Nelson Mandela's famous never and never and never again, which is historically recorded as a key moment in history. This is very, very different when you create an impression that somebody is alive. It may also, in a culturally sensitive environment such as South Africa, especially KwaZulu-Natal, it may, while Ushenge or Umtwana, as they used to call the former president of the IFP, while he is admired and he was admired in that region, some may find it insensitive and tone deaf that you actually play a clip of him as if he's around. And by the fact that you may have gone through all the protocols to get permission from the family and from the party, one may not necessarily create misleading adverts, especially in the context of the election, because the ICASA, for example, has got specific guidelines about what broadcasters should do when they interact with political parties in terms of equitable coverage.
But you see, here's the thing. I mean, I heard it in my way driving to work, and when I first heard it, I'm telling myself, this person sounds just so much like Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi. That's what I'm hearing. And then as he continues talking, it's very clear to me that it's him, right? And then what's interesting, he makes the call for us to vote for the IFP. So what's interesting, compared to the examples you gave before, he comes across as if he's living, and then he's got a very clear call to action that playing an old clip of, say, Nelson Mandela cannot do, because he's telling you to vote now. Okay, and it's his voice. So it's not a voiceover that says that, right? So your thoughts, I mean, clearly, what is the bottom line to this? The bottom line to this is that the IFP wants talkability and to provoke thought around their party, which they've succeeded in doing, because you and I are talking about it now.
No, absolutely. I think that's correct. But you almost also want to get talkability, get publicity, because some people say every publicity is good publicity. But in the specific context, you also want to have some ethical considerations, in the sense that you openly state that you are quoting a person so that the advert is not as misleading. Because one of the key issues that we are facing in this election and in this era is misinformation during election time. And this might actually easily turn around into becoming a misinformation debate where other political parties may actually begin to speak about it negatively and address a critique around it. And that in its own might be for a political own goal.
Okay, so to borrow a very modern day phrase, is this not just misleading, but can this constitute fake news because the person who's calling us to vote is not alive?
Yeah, I mean, it borders seriously around misinformation and, of course, fictitious or fake news because here you are creating an impression, even though you know what you are doing, but you are creating an impression that somebody who is not around is actually making a call. It's very different from saying, do it for Buthelezi, do it for our former leader, vote IFP for our former leader, which is far more accurate. Perhaps because you are calling on people to follow a particular narrative or a particular view of a former leader.
Accepting, you see, it's far more accurate, but what it would lack the uniqueness of an advert, isn't it?
Precisely. So here you can see that, and you see some of this in political narratives, that political parties actually make public.
All right, I'll tell you what, let's just hold it. We'll talk more after this.
Join us on Afternoon Express Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3 as we celebrate Workers' Day. Tatu Mambalani shares how to assert yourself at work without being arrogant, and Amy Kleinhans lets us in on how to beat a bad day at the office. And we're making peanut butter balls for that 3 p.m. brain fog. That's Afternoon Express Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m. only on S3.
Students from Fort Hare University have calculated that only a win will elevate them from the bottom half. Meanwhile, Thunderbirds ladies are in dire need of 3 points to escape from the basement. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the queens of the beautiful game, the University of Fort Hare versus Thunderbirds ladies, on Wednesday 1 May at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the
game. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, let's conclude this conversation with Tsepo Matseba about the IFP advert that features the voice of the late Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, but in a voice in the style that he's talking to us right now. So I was saying before the break there that, they've succeeded in terms of creating a USP or novelty factor when putting out ads, isn't it?
Yeah, they may have succeeded in getting some attention for the short term, but the consequence might actually be very, very different because in communication, and so much, especially political communication, facts matter, and these are public service announcements, not necessarily traditional adverts as we know them. And so there's an expectation of the word authenticity and truth in what you advertise. And that means you cannot go out deliberately to mislead, especially in the context of an environment where people are very, very sensitive around issues of traditions and customs and things like that. And so therefore, it might be a political own goal.
Okay. And it might be a political own goal. The key word is own goal and might. So maybe it's not going to be. We're going to find out. It probably will matter on the polls, isn't it? Tsepo Matseba, Managing Director of Reputation First. Thank you for joining us here on the National Pulse. Let's talk about an update on the 6th administration in the KZN region right after this.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, as we get to the end of most political parties or governments and even regional and provincial at the end of this administration, understandably, they're all doing their own evaluations. That is the case with regard to the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Legislature. My guest is Nontembeko Boyce, Speaker of the KZN Provincial Legislature. Appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, and greetings to you and the listeners.
Thank you. Now, understand that as we get to the end of this, the sixth administration, you have certain points about the region that you administer or govern that you'd like to punctuate. Tell us about them.
Now, what I wanted to speak about is the experiences that we've had over this term, especially considering that it was more of a difficult term because of COVID-19, what happened in 2021 in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and also the 2022 floods in the province. But regardless of that, what then happened in us, in terms of our mandate, the ability for the legislature, the 80 members, to forge ahead with the mandate that we are given by the Constitution. And when we were forging ahead with that, being able to exercise oversight, do the lawmaking, but importantly, the unity of the parties in the legislature of KwaZulu-Natal, making that possible. And we learned a lot from what has happened, including what we have always been doing as the legislature of KwaZulu-Natal, the civic education that we usually do prior to elections. But in the context of these lessons, the 3 lessons that we have seen, it became a new phenomenon that we are speaking to people that others are still having families or family members that were never buried. But as a province, we are moving ahead. We are able to have these communities integrated with the rest of the province by the work that we are doing as a legislature through public participation. The inclusion in terms of diversity, because the public participation of public involvement side, where we have to include new symposiums and speaking to new target groups, the LGBTQIA, including the young women, but also being able to speak about difficult subjects, the sex work, and how it impacts generally the society in the province. So we think that as a province of KwaZulu-Natal and as the members, we've had a good term because we're able to learn from the misfortunes that we've had, but through the leadership of the parties that were party to the legislature and the unity that was demonstrated in the legislature, we had come to this time where we celebrate the end of the term, but we were able to not have these fall aparts that we might have had when we're faced with the 3 major challenge that we had.
And when you say you've had a good term, I mean, what would you rate your administration's term out of 10?
Look, when you're looking at yourself, I might be looking at ourselves and probably blow our own horn. But before I come to 10 out of 10, I would say that we think that we've done pretty well in reaching more people and involving more people in the programs of the legislature. We have done in bringing in new legislations in the province, whether we speaking about the scrutiny of the subordinate legislations that has been done in the province, and the racialization of the economic development provincial act, and the fact that we're the first province that by the 1st of April, when we were supposed to have the new PPFA in effect, we were ready with a policy that was adopted by all political parties, and how we continue to have new innovations in terms of the school functionality and other new facets like the special ad hoc committee that was dealing with the procurement for COVID-19. I usually give ourselves 8 out of 10 because there is always a room to do more. We could have done much more if we had at least more learning opportunities.
Okay.
I say more learning opportunities because we learn not only through what we have seen, because there are also other programs that we could have attended during the time of lockdown that were going to open us up that we could not.
Let me just to end up, we've got about 30 seconds to go. I understand the learnings around, taking Parliament to what I'd call the e-Parliament era in terms of digital embracing has certainly escalated dramatically so, right, with the KZN legislature, right? In 30 seconds.
Indeed, we have escalated. That's why I said the new ways of us having to involve people. We have improved in the terms of the e-Parliament. All the members of the legislature, we were holding the committees and the House virtually right from the start. We started from the 1st of May to even have the Workers' Parliament of 2020 virtually.
Okay.
And I think that we are very fine in that area.
Well, 8 out of 10, as you said. Let's leave it at that. That's Nontembeko Boy, Speaker of the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Legislature, giving themselves 8 out of 10. More to come, including the whole MK signature forgery issue. What does it mean for the IEC and the MK? We'll talk about that with Tessa Dooms in a minute, or in a few minutes' time. In fact, let's get the news first. Just go on 4 o'clock. Here's Deneo Motaung.
Thank you, Ashraf. Top stories. SABC News head questions state agency vetting process and Nigeria's fuel shortages deepen. A very good afternoon. We begin with election news. The SABC's head of news, Moshweshwe Monare, has questioned who made the decision that he be called to take part in a polygraph test at the State Security Agency just weeks before the May 29th general elections. Monare was speaking on the SABC's news channel. Earlier, presidency spokesperson Vincent Magwenya disputed reports that Monare was being targeted ahead of the elections. Magwenya's comments follow reports Monare was under scrutiny for the negative publicity regarding the ANC leading up to the elections. Monare has reiterated his position that he does not have a problem with the vetting of senior staff at the public broadcaster.
Whatever we do in our newsroom is in the context of media freedom, and therefore I did not understand why state security agents would want to conduct a polygraph test on me. And even then, I said to them, can you put it in writing, the rationale, the reasons, and who made the call? The supervisor of that agent called me to say, look, the client, not us as state security, make that kind of call. It's not us who. And I said, who is the client? I'm still waiting for that answer to say, who's the client who make that call?
Meanwhile, Magwenya earlier said Monare's vetting process was requested by the SABC only because his security clearance was not completed after joining the public broadcaster in 2022.
Upon his appointment, Mr. Monare gave consent to the vetting process and completed the form that was furnished to him and went further to submit some, but not all of the information that was required. Process was then stalled when Mr. Monare did not want to submit himself to a polygraph test, which is part of the vetting process. Consequently, the vetting of Mr. Monare was never completed.
This story may offend sensitive listeners, including children. The High Court in Johannesburg has sentenced a mother of a toddler to 25 years in prison, and her boyfriend has been handed life imprisonment. 24-year-old Rochelle Botha and a 37-year-old boyfriend Stefan van Niekerk were found guilty of the murder of 2-year-old Siobhan Rush. The court heard how the pair beat Siobhan to death at their home in the east of Johannesburg. A post-mortem report found 49 wounds and bruises on Siobhan's body. Acting Judge Annelien Africa handed down the judgment.
Accused 1, you are effectively sentenced to 25 years direct imprisonment. In respect of accused 2, considering that the prescribed minimum sentence in respect of counts 3 and 8 is life imprisonment, the sentence is so imposed in respect of counts 4, 5, 6 and 7, when in terms of section 39, bracket 2, bracket A, I of the Correctional Services Act run concurrently with the sentences of life imprisonment.
In other news, the deadline to submit comments on the suitability of candidates nominated for the position of Chief Justice of South Africa and Deputy President of the Supreme Court of Appeal is drawing closer. The Office of the Chief Justice, in a statement, sent out a reminder to law bodies, members of the public and other interested institutions to make their comments. Kenny Mapanga reports.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has informed the Judicial Service Commission that he is considering appointing Deputy Chief Justice Mandisa Maya to the position of Chief Justice. Ramaphosa is also considering Chairperson of the Electoral Court, Justice Dumsani Zondi, for the position of the Deputy President of the SCA. Both candidates have accepted their nominations and all comments must reach the Secretariat of the JSC by no later than Thursday, the 2nd of May 2024. Kenny Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Lastly, petrol shortages have worsened in Nigeria's major cities, with long winding queues at fuel outlets, crippling transport and businesses. This highlighting state oil firm NNPC struggle to meet supply obligations. President Bola Tinubu's government last year opened petrol imports to private firms, but foreign currency shortages and a cap on the price of petrol has meant only NNPC remains the sole importer. Petrol is widely used in cars and to power generators by households and small businesses, and any shortages have a ripple effect on the economy, which is grappling with the highest inflation rate in 28 years. Recapping the top story this hour, the SABC's head of news, Moshashwe Monare, has questioned who made the decision that he be called to take part in a polygraph test at the State Security Agency just weeks before the May 29th general elections. Headlines at 4:30 for SAFM News. I'm Dinoma Taung.
Coming up in your sports this hour, New Zealand skipper Williamson set for 6th T20 World Cup and Joshua targets September return at Wembley. More details at 4:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N1 northbound in Midrand has a vehicle fire incident reported just before Samrand Road. In Pretoria, the N1 northbound has a stationary vehicle just before Regal Avenue, and Mabopane Highway outbound has a stationary vehicle reported at the hairpin bend, causing delays. In KZN, the M4 has roadworks with traffic restrictions reported at Tongaat Beach, so you're asked to expect delays. The N3 has roadworks with major upgrade works between Spaghetti Junction and the M13 Paradise Valley interchange. In Pinetown, traffic lights not working at the M7 St. John's Avenue and Bamboo Lane, and traffic lights are not working at Stapleton Road and Eden Road. In Cape Town, the M7 Jakes Harville Drive in Mitchell's Plain is closed between Morganstair Road and Cedar Avenue, so expect delays and diversions. The N2 outbound has roadworks reported, one lane open at Meway, so you're asked to expect delays. In Albert Road in Woodstock has roadworks with traffic restrictions between Salt River Circle and Lower Church Street. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
Nalibito la ka ke bonolo mo atlu di bantso mbark Miss B morara Miss T mo atlu di the Bonnie B Bon Bon, and we'll be now playing Kena on Mondays at 4:30. The day has changed but the time slot hasn't. So if you're interested in news that's happening with us kids and our peers around the world, don't forget to tune in. See you there.
The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
I see there's some comment about the KZN speaker saying 8 out of 10 with a ha ha ha. We'll certainly comment on that just now in terms of what you scored. By the way, I went to a wedding on the weekend, and it's amazing how many people came up to me telling me, but not just telling me that I'm hosting the show on SAFM once again, but referring to it as the National Pulse, and very clear in their minds what it meant. And so the brand has stuck very quickly. And therefore, I think it's just fair that I ask you, like, what's your pulse rate like right now? What's the national pulse rate like, and what are the big issues that gets the national pulse racing? And you can certainly tell me, and you know that you have many options. You can tweet it out, just tag us on the X platform, SAFM Radio, and tag me, Ashraf Garda. Use that hashtag, the National Pulse. But you have the options to call in 086 000 2032. Please save that number. You must save that number permanently. Save the WhatsApp number too, okay, which is 0614 104 107. You had that 0614 104 107. Right. Let's get to 1 month to the elections and the political issues. Well, there's just not a dull day since I've hosted the show, which will be 1 month tomorrow, right? And now it's the issue of the MK party. Around the issues of fraudulent registration names that need to be put in for them to submit on the one hand, but the greater issue around the checks and balances of the IEC with regarding that. So we'll chat to Tessa Dooms about that just in a moment. In the meantime, however, let's just talk about some of the issues here. Firstly, about that people have called in on that I think that we need to pick up on, right? So here's one about the MK party.
Sure. Sibusiso Makaula from Manfred. I was about to vote I was intending to vote for the MK. But now I've just changed my mind. MK has disappointed me. They have expelled Jabulan Khumalo. There are some reports that there were signatures that were defrauded. There's a case that has been opened. No, I don't want to vote for MK. This is a party of crooks. No, I'd rather go back to NC. Spuso Makala from Manfred.
Okay, I mean, looking at that last part, you end by saying the party of crooks and you start by saying I intended to vote for them. So how did that change so dramatically that you could move from liking them and wanting to vote for them to now what you call a party of crooks? Certainly something for me to think about, talking about crooks. What about a polygraph test?
Ashraf, Craig, if you know anything about polygraph tests, so to say lie detection tests, it's a specific application for a specific purpose. It's not something you can apply generically to somebody to check. It's applied where somebody is suspected of having done something wrong or having a specific involvement. So my question is, what are they going to say? Who do you support? The ANC? Give us a truthful answer or not. Or who do you support? The DA? Give us a truthful answer or not. Or have you ever stolen? I mean, specifically, what questions are they going to ask him? How utterly ridiculous.
I tell you what, those questions will be answered not by the person doing the polygraph test. We're going to get to the voice of Michael Markowitz, former SABC board member, and he will comment about just that because I think the principles are intact from before, right? So let's see what he will help you get answers to your questions about what you've just said. Right, Tessa Dooms will get to us shortly. Here's another issue around vetting.
Good afternoon. I just want to comment on the issue of vetting. I think history have taught us that only criminals are afraid of vetting. So if the head of news in SABC is clean, why should we make an issue out of this? There's no issue here. There's no issue. We have all went through these processes in different companies. So this is not new in South Africa. Let him do it to show that he's clean. And this can't be intimidation, honestly.
But if it's not intimidation, then what is it? I mean, I'm also asking, because I think we're all learning about what's allowed and what's not allowed and why now. But I certainly heard Mvusi Bakaya saying, in fact, we're overreacting to this. It's just normal stuff. Let's go to Limpopo now. Love the fact that people are all around the country. In fact, wherever you are, you know that standard, okay? Tell me where you are, and if you can, take a picture of where you are seated, ideally or standing with a picture of the dial of SAFM there in the background. It'd be great if you do that with a thumbs up, okay? Percy in Limpopo. Hi, Percy.
Much. How are you?
I'm good indeed. Right. What do you want to pick up on voting, right?
Yes, it's vetting, and I think with election as well. I would want to start by delinking them because it may as well lead to perceptions and assumptions that may not be necessary. But in the main, on the issue of vetting, I think it will be proper that if there is a mechanism, because I take it that vetting is one of the mechanisms to ensure that you are able to get suitable candidates to be part of governance structures and so on. And therefore, one would want to indicate that if indeed that is the process that needs to be followed, that needs to be done. But it may not be that it be insinuated as if it's more on the censorship with regard to the elections that are coming. Because if then we contextualize that as part of censorship, that becomes a problem, because it then means that there is interference in the work of the SABC. But in the main, I think with regard to elections, obviously it's a very important barometer and yardstick that needs to be conducted every 5 years. And I think we should be able to ready ourselves to go on the 29th and ensure that we are able to elect the party that would want to lead us in this country. And therefore, one would want to believe, given the hype that is there in terms of the readiness of the elections, that majority of the people in this country, they would be ready to go and vote on the 29th of May. And I think that is important, because we are able to renew, if we are to renew the mandate of whoever is leading now, or we are able to then have other choices in relation to who should be able to lead the state. But so far, we should be able to indicate that this administration has done much in relation to ensuring the state year, in relation to ensuring that indeed with regard to policies, with regard to many other things, it was able to complete that, and we are able to see the positive spin-offs of whatever policy that they have done. And therefore, just to give an example with regard to your Employment Equity Act, which in the main also has a chapter that deals with affirmative action. We could, of course, attest to the reality that there's a change in terms of the demographics in the market, and that needs to be really celebrated as a result of the outcome of the elections that was conducted in 1994. And therefore, in that context, we should get courage to ensure that we are able to go and be able to cross, and whoever would want us to lead the country, as opposed to these other negatives that may want to suggest to bring us back.
Okay, thanks for that contribution from Kroonstad, from Telly. In fact, we've got there's another comment. And as soon as we can get hold of Tessa Dooms, we will talk to you, because we need to do that. So here's from the anonymous truck driver, who obviously hoots as well when he gets online, right? Hello, anonymous.
Ashraf, Telly in Kronstadt.
Yeah. Oh, Telly first up, right? Okay, go ahead, Telly. Yeah.
Yeah, two things, Ashraf. The first one, this issue of vetting and polygraph. Are we really saying that when it is time for elections, things must come to a halt? Because that's the impression that you are creating, that when this thing comes, because elections are coming, why can't it wait up until after elections?
Okay, well, it's not so much I'm creating it. I mean, I'm asking the questions. The fact that the SABC's head of news has also commented, that means he sees fit to comment about it. Otherwise, he would not have commented about it. So it's a very public issue, isn't it?
Yeah, like other callers are indicating, almost everybody in the public sector, like myself in education, we've all been vetted. And there was that narrative, people were afraid that they were going to lose their jobs. And some of us were saying, but this thing is not going to reveal something that you may not know as a person. Because if you are found guilty having slept with a school child, you would know about that, and the records will reveal that, and such people will then lose their jobs.
Okay.
So the second one, I'm a little bit worried about the narrative that Jay-Z is peddling out there. I was in KZN during the weekend, and when you listen to people who are starting to support MK, they are referring to Ramaphosa, and Ramaphosa is going to assist his own people at our own expense. And that's what JC is peddling. He has been talking about the ANC of Ramaphosa, and now people are starting to think that other people than the Zulu-speaking people are going to benefit from the ANC, and MK is the answer, or is the antithesis.
And you don't like that? Is that what you're saying? I mean, you don't like that information that's being peddled, yeah?
I'm afraid that is promoting tribalism. And you've seen what has happened to other countries in Africa, all over the world. People cleansing themselves and people starting to kill each other because they belong to a particular tribe. So I'm afraid that that's what he's peddling.
Okay, got that, Telly. I'm not saying that's what he's peddling, but if that's the case, I would also be afraid. Telly from Kroonstad. I mean, here's the point, right? Yeah, look, I don't know, okay, but I think, as we've seen from many examples, and maybe the Rwandan example of 30 years ago is just the most prevalent one of all, whatever our political party views are, I mean, the only advice I can give to myself and to others is don't play the narrow tribal card, because that will divide a nation. And, you know, if we think fights and wars in an intolerant society are a joke, you've got another thing coming. We've had the example of Rwanda. You can see how separating people in the whole Palestine-Israel region just causes so much upheaval. You do not want to be a part of that. This is the National Pulse.
Keeping up with your TV license balance inquiries is now simpler than ever. No more waiting in queues. No more phone calls. Just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 and secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Business owners, don't waste your time searching for an employee that has it all. They do not exist. But I will tell you what does exist. The Kia K2700 Workhorse. It's versatile, powerful, and reliable. It also arrives on time every day. Save your cash with no deposit and only pay 5,799 Rand per month. It's the business partner you've been waiting for. Up your game with the Kia K2700 Workhorse. Visit kia.co.za for more. T's and C's apply.
Kia. Movement that inspires.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Well, absolutely. I mean, some of you are commenting about no jokes in war. That's real talk. That is real talk. And really, we cannot romanticize that. That, you know, even if people are different and think differently of a political party contestation at elections, that's fine. You can argue with each other, that's fine. But when it gets split up to the point where there's massive intolerance and then people pick that intolerance, not just in terms of ideological difference, but ideological that's linked to tribes, then you have a recipe for absolute disaster. And I'm saying to you, let us not even get anywhere near that. In the powers that, I speak like a lawyer, with the powers vested in us, okay, let us always play up the importance of the nation, the one nation, compared to the multi-nations within the one nation as the most important. Let's get to the issues of, my apology, we've just battled to connect with Tessa Dooms, and as soon as we can get hold of her, we will talk to her. Let's, however, talk to Nkululeko Tselani, was an attorney and legal counsel at the Institute of Election Management Services. We are talking about the issues of election posters that now must surface in your townships, in your suburbs, in the downtown areas of all the cities that make up South Africa ahead of the election, right? The question is, there's been lots of talk about these posters being removed. So, who guards those posters? So let's find out more about it. Nkululeko, thanks for your time. You're on the National Pulse.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and good afternoon to you and your listeners.
Thank you. So help us understand this. I mean, the legality of posters being put up and then defaced or damaged or removed even before election time's over.
Yes. So what we have to remember is that the removal of electoral posters is a criminal offense. It's dealt with by Section 92 of the Electoral Act. And it says that no person may deface or unlawfully remove any billboard, placard, or poster published by a registered party or candidate. Now, that's very important. And then the penalty for that is it could be a period of imprisonment up to 5 years. So there's a pretty high penalty for anyone who's found guilty of that.
Okay, but the reality is there's been allegations of poster removal or defacing in this election and in the municipal elections and in many previous elections before that. And I don't hear much about people being prosecuted. What does that tell me? That it's actually difficult to nail people down?
Well, it's a law enforcement issue at the end of the day. So if we're seeing this happening, it has to be reported to the relevant authorities. Of course, the difficulty comes. One can only assume that this is done in the dead of night, where there's little to no witnesses around. And I think that really just highlights the difficulty and the crime issue. So when we look at it, we have to remember this is a crime issue. It's not necessarily a strictly electoral issue.
Yeah, I get that, right? But so, I mean, if it's a crime issue, I mean, do you know? And I mean, you're not the IEC. I get that, right? But I mean, do you know how many of these type of incidences get reported in previous elections and get reported now as a crime issue in this election?
Unfortunately, I don't have the statistics in front of me. However, I do know that the relevant political parties have raised this issue with the Electoral Commission, and also through the media. They've really been canvassing this issue, which is important. Really, what has to happen is that we all have to take accountability and responsibility for this beast that we call democracy, and it really requires all of us, when we see it happening, to report it to the police, because otherwise it's a faceless crime.
How do you have any idea how does our the prevalence of defacing measures up when compared to, say, other countries in the world that also puts up election posters? I'm just trying to make the comparison in South Africa and the rest.
Yes, look, it's not a uniquely South African problem. Once again, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but yes, similarly across the world, there are instances where posters and billboards are defaced. But then once again, that then goes to a law enforcement issue. So what you'll find is that in every electoral legislation and framework, there are clear guidelines and clear penalties for dealing with this particular type of electoral crime, meaning that it also happens in other more developed democracies. Because I think what we also have to remember is that politics is a very fiery sport, one could say. So it does unfortunately elicit these types of emotions in people, but it really is a law enforcement issue.
Yeah, okay, got that. Nkululeko Tserani speaking on behalf of the Institute of Election Management Services here in South Africa. So, what about you? So, have you seen people deface other posters? Let's say in the streets that you're in, the townships or suburbs that you live in, and if you have seen it, what have you done? What have you done about it, if anything? Okay. On the other hand, and maybe this is a more lighter note issue, but it's a serious election issue. If you find that you support a political party A, and the posters are put up on municipal street lights, right? Those lampposts. So it's not yours. And if you find that they put up a party poster of a party that you do not support, I don't mean just one poster. I don't mean multiple posters. I mean just one. How do you feel about it? I mean, you can't do much about it as far as I'm concerned. But what do you feel about it if you are at complete opposite ends of that political party's vision? Are you comfortable if it happens to be just right outside your house, so you're like waiting for the other parties then to bring up their posters? So I'd like you to share your thoughts with that on me. 0614104107. That's WhatsApp, text, or voice notes. Let's get Tessa. We've had an issue to connect with them. This I'm not sure who sent this, but I've got a picture of Rowena and Mike, in fact. Rowena is in Rowena Baird, right? Who hosted the show on SFM 9 to 12 for a good few years until sadly she passed away, right? And Good friend, good chummy on air, good chummy off air. But Mike's got a picture saying, Ashraf, I was lucky enough to meet Rowena for a few times and she's sorely missed. And yeah, that was 10 years ago today. There's a picture that we have of the two of them. There we are. Looks like in Cape Town because I can sort of see Table Mountain in the background, I think, right? And then saying, great show, so important to keep highlighting the freedom of speech after the attack by the ANC security arm on Meshweshwe Monare. Is that how you see it, an attack? Well, others may see that very differently. But anyway, we're going to have further comment on that. Comment and commentary on that from you and the audience too. It's 4:30. Let's get the news headlines. Here's Daneo.
Thank you very much, Ashraf. A very good afternoon. Let's take a look at the headlines at 4:30. Executive Director at the Campaign for Free Expression, Professor Anton Haber, says the SABC's Head of News and Current Affairs, Moshoeshoe Monare's independence is of critical importance. Haber was commenting after the presidency disputed weekend reports that Monare was being targeted ahead of the 29th May general elections. In other news, the deadline to submit comments on the suitability of candidates nominated for the position of Chief Justice of South Africa and Deputy President of the Supreme Court of Appeal is drawing closer. And the High Court in Johannesburg has sentenced a mother of a toddler to 25 years in prison, and her boyfriend has been handed life imprisonment. 24-year-old Rochelle Botha and her 37-year-old boyfriend Stefan van Niekerk were found guilty for the murder of the 2-year-old. A full update follows at the top of the hour with Greg Hoos.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, Bayes Nodia Drive in Rand Park Ridge is queuing at Easterhout Drive. The N1 northbound in Midrand is where vehicle fire incidents reported just before Samrand Road, causing heavy delays in that area. And Mabopane Highway outbound in Pretoria has a stationary vehicle reported at the Hairpin Bend, causing delays. In KZN, the N3 westbound is slow moving towards the M13 Paradise Valley. The N3 in both ways is roadworks with traffic restrictions in that Cliffdale area, and the R620 is closed in the central Margate area due to storm damage. In Cape Town, the M3 inbound is slow moving towards Hospital Bend. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is queuing towards Hospital Bend. The N1 outbound is slow moving towards Kuburg Interchange, and the N7 Jakes Hadwell Drive southbound is slow moving towards Voortrekker Road. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Doming Kapele.
All right, your top story was awards time earlier on, but what's it now?
It's cricket. Captain Kane Williamson will play at his 6th T20 World Cup in June after New Zealand named an experienced 15-man squad today. The tournament to be hosted in the United States and the West Indies from the 2nd to the 3rd of June will be Williamson's 4th as a captain. The batsman leads a squad including New Zealand's Test captain Tim Southee, who will be taking part in his 7th T20 World Cup. And in terms of the South African squad, it will be named tomorrow around 10 a.m. In football, Royal AM coach John Maduka is not giving up on their target of finishing in the DStv Premiership top 8 despite their heavy loss at home to Orlando Pirates. The KZN side lost 4-0 against Soweto Giants yesterday, and Maduka says that he's very adamant that their fate remains in their own hands as they remain 4 points behind 8th spot with 6 games remaining.
It's still up to us. Still up to us. If you look at the team that have got 32 points or 33 points, they played 5 games, got a game in hand. It's up to us to win the game on Wednesday. We are level same number of what we got this. Maybe our goal difference is not good, but we can still push on to that.
Still staying with football, Chelsea defender Thiago Silva will leave the club at the end of the season. The Brazilian has made 151 appearances for the Blues. He has won 3 trophies in that time, including the 2020-21 Champions League. Silva says that his love for the club is indescribable. He joined the club when Frank Lampard was the manager and has since also played under Thomas Tuchel, Graham Potter and Mauricio Pochettino. In rugby, when the Junior Springboks opened their Under-20 Rugby Championship campaign against New New Zealand at the Sunshine Coast Stadium on Thursday. They will have the benefit of calling on J.F. van Heerden. The line-out operator is one of the only of a handful of players in the junior box squad who has experience playing at international level, having played a great role in Bafana Ntleko's squad that finished third at the World Rugby Under-20 Championship in Cape Town last year. Then in boxing, British heavyweight Anthony Joshua says that he expects to fight at Wembley Stadium in September. The 34-year-old stopped Francis Ngannou in March in his last fight, his fourth win in a row. And Matchroom currently are planning an event at Wembley, and Joshua says that it would be either on the 20th or the 21st of September, with his opponent yet to be announced. Then in the business of sports, it seems like the Saudi Arabia rather has continued to infiltrate the world of sports, because Aramco, which is a Saudi state-owned oil and gas major company, agreed a 4-year global partnership with FIFA, and the deal makes Aramco FIFA's major worldwide partner. It gives it sponsorship rights at the 2026 FIFA Men's World Cup, which will be hosted in the US, Mexico and Canada, as well as the 2027 Women's World Cup. The deal is reportedly worth 1.8 billion rand annually.
Wow. Did you follow how much? I mean, Sundowns lost their Champions League semi-final Friday night, right? African Champions League. So that's the bad news. We're not in the final.
But they're in the
But
Club
did you see? Yeah,
World Cup.
this is the same one they're talking about, aren't they? I think.
This one.
Yeah.
So the partnership with FIFA is basically for the World Cups, not for the Club World Cups.
Oh,
but
the
it's for
actual
World
national
Cups.
World Cups. Okay.
Yes.
But anyway, that one that Sundowns are playing, this Club World Cup, do you know how much they get? I can't remember, but I know it's some big amount. Whatever it is, it's a big amount. Find out, I want to know. Because they said Sundowns lost, Sundowns won. Something like that, you know.
Well, with that said, it's a wrap from my side for now. I'll have more in at the next hour. For SAFM Sport, I'm Dumin Khabele.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Okay, let's get, we will take further calls, we'll take comments. By the way, how about this? Any thoughts you have, besides the SABC polygraph test we've been talking about, because we'll pick up that conversation just now. Do you have an opinion on the IFP, the IFP, using the voice of their former leader, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, in a call-out for voters, but the voice comes across as if it's live, like he's alive. So he's saying vote now. Obviously, it must have been old recordings, right? Do you have an opinion on that in terms of the ethics, the morality? Is it bizarre? Is it just brilliant marketing? Any opinions on that? I want to know. And then the last one regarding the defacing of these election posters. I mean, here's another one. I can't remember who it is. Someone saying it was flipped over. No, I'm not too sure about that. We'll pick up on that. But anyway, if you have, how about you taking some pictures of election posters that had been defaced in your community, and then posting up tops. I mean, just you can WhatsApp it firstly, so we can see that. I can comment on it, but also you can tag us on our social media pages, particularly SFM Radio, as well as on the SFM Radio on Twitter. So Twitter, Facebook, those combinations. Use that National Pulse, the National Pulse hashtag. Okay. Let's talk. Let's get to the markets now, as we normally do around this time with Makwe Masilela, as always, the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Makwe, good chatting to you. We missed you all of last week.
Missed you too, guys. Good afternoon to you, Ashraf, and to the listeners.
Good afternoon. Right, I'm very good. What do you want to pick up with?
You know, we've seen that last week the oil share was up to 2.5%, so it means it didn't miss me. The rand strengthened 2%, oil strengthened 2.5%, and gold strengthened 0.4%. But today we opened the session in the black in what's set to be another hectic week in the markets. U.S. earnings season, Ashraf, is helping to offset jitters around the Fed for now, and it's very hard to be away from your desk. If you trade Japan's currency, we've seen the currency was swinging wildly earlier today, falling to its weakest in 34 years before rebounding strongly, raising speculation that authorities may have intervened. And tomorrow we'll be looking to the Chinese manufacturing data for April, and that is for signs that a long-awaited recovery is gathering momentum after last month's stronger than expected data, and ours is on Thursday. Wednesday, and the Eurozone is to release inflation and economic growth data, which will likely strengthen the case for a June rate cut when it comes to the European Central Bank. And locally on Tuesday, we'll be getting our March credit extension figures, and also market participants will be awaiting indications about whether the Fed still expects to cut interest rate at some stage this year when officials conclude their two-day policy meeting on Wednesday. And on Friday, we're getting the mother of all reports, that is the monthly jobs report, which will give a fresh look at the strength of the U.S. labor market. And we've seen oil prices dipping as Israel-Hamas ceasefire talks in Cairo tempered fears of a wider Middle East conflict, while U.S. inflation data dimmed the prospect of interest rate cuts anytime soon. And Brent crude is down 0.4% at $87 a barrel. And we know that higher interest rates are typically negative for gold, as gold itself doesn't pay any interest. So the yellow metal further lost some support as safe haven demand is easing. So gold is trading within a narrow range, as it is now is flat at 2,336, and platinum is up a whopping 2.7% at 940. Probably that has been helping our resources, but the DAX is down 0.2%, CAC down 0.1%, FTSE up 0.2%, the Dow is up 0.3%, S&P up 0.4%, the JSE is up nicely 1.2%, with our resources up 1.8%, financials up 1.3%, and industrials up 0.7%. The rand is now 1868 to the US dollar, 23.41 to the pound, and 19.98 to the euro.
And that's it for today, all right?
That's it for today.
Okay, we'll chat tomorrow, I'm sure, about that. Makwe Masilela, the Chief Investment Officer at Makwe Fund Managers. Right, I'll look at some of your WhatsApp comments in text form. I'll play some of the voice notes. I will also pick out your... I'll also pick out some of the calls that you have as well, and we can read all of those here. Here's a comment: Ashraf, in repressive regimes, the ruling party members remove opposition party posters and are not prosecuted for it. From Anonymous. Yeah, we know. It doesn't happen in South Africa. We make a big noise about it. And here's another one very quickly. Ashraf, voices from yesteryears. With respect, South Africa seems to be stuck in the past. How can we expect to grow if we don't let it go to embrace the future? From Kat in Pietermaritzburg.
Mama Kitty, I heard Rand Water talking on the radio about how dangerous it is for people to encroach on their pipeline servitude.
Yes, those high-pressure Rand Water pipelines are under the ground distributing megaliters of water. When people build on top of the pipeline, Rand Water is unable to conduct maintenance on the pipeline, which has a negative impact on water provision. Pipelines can burst without warning. People could get seriously injured or worse.
Yes, people can die from a bursting pipe. That is why people need to understand that Rand Water servitude is where a Rand Water pipeline is located. If we build our houses or businesses on a Rand Water servitude, then we are encroaching on that servitude. They say if communities want to know whether they've encroached over servitudes, they should look for the Rand Water beacons.
The beacons indicate the presence of Rand Water pipelines under the ground. They're rectangular, made of concrete, are painted either white or blue, and have the Rand Water logo on them.
Let's take a walk around our area to see if there are any Rand Water beacons, so that we can also tell the neighbors.
Rand Water, celebrating 120 years of existence and still finding new ways to provide clean, portable bulk water.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
All right, here's a chance for you to vote. It is voting season after all, isn't it? The South African Sports Awards recognizes and honors the best in sport on and off the field, celebrating 30 years of freedom through sporting excellence. Now, you can select your favorite People's Choice nominee. Here they are. A is Eben Etzebeth, B is Gerda Steyn, C is Sia Kolisi, D, Percy Tau, E, Kirsten Nau Schäfer. And then you SMS one of those choices, A, B, C, or D, or E, to 3202. Do not forget that, 3202. The SMSs cost R1.50. T's and C's apply. Visit dsac.gov.za and then catch the 17th edition of the South African Sports Awards on Sunday the 5th of May at 8 p.m. live on SABC Sport on the DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. And of course follow that hashtag Izinia Ze Game.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Okay, let's do this. We're going to take some calls as well. If you have any thoughts on some of the issues, and later on, as part of the election watch, we'll look at important issues around which I call the Remember Me, the hashtag Remember Me campaign that comes up in a few minutes' time. But I think that there's a call from the anonymous truck driver. In fact, we've lost him for the moment. There certainly are some voice notes that I want to pick out on, because we've been asking about voting, 1 month to go. So here's one about the DA and the ANC, the two largest voting blocs in the country, and somebody has an opinion on that.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. It's Mac in Durban. Ashraf, two things are going to happen. The DA is going to give the ANC the vote to govern. ANC won at 50%, but where are they going to get the 10% or so that they need? The DA is going to give it to them. Why would the DA do that? Because if they don't, the FF is going to give it to them. Or maybe even MK will give it to them. So the DA will never risk any of these parties on the left, that is MK, EFF, partnering with the ANC to form a coalition government. Rather, so what's going to happen is we're going to have a coalition government between the DA and the ANC. So the ANC is coming back to power, thanks to the DA.
Okay, that's one voice there. Let's see if we've got another one. Here's a comment about the KZN legislature rating themselves. In fact, 8 out of 10. But do you agree? Let's hear.
Ashraf, Craig again. I'll laugh for you. 8 out of 10. 10 out of 10. Oh my goodness. The problem there, it's relative to the people in the positions. So people that are in positions that they shouldn't be don't actually know how they should be rated. That's the problem.
Okay, that's well, and you have your opinion, as you've clearly showed us, Craig. 10 out of 10, as you've said. But anyway, we have diverse opinions from all around the country, around the world. In fact, if you are listening via streaming live anywhere in the world, how about you just tell us exactly where you are, so we know. But even in South Africa, because ultimately, in always we connect to what we call the national pulse. There's a fascinating campaign called Remember Me coming up, and it represents part of our Election Watch feature.
This Election Watch feature is brought to you by Kagiso Trust. Follow the hashtag Remember Me initiative.
Right, this is part one. In fact, Kagiso Trust sponsoring the Election Watch feature right through this entire month. But we're going to start with understanding why, and what is the Remember Me campaign. So my guest is Thabiso Ratsomos, the Kagiso Trust Deputy Chairperson. Thabiso, great chatting to you. You're live on the National Pulse.
Hi, fine. How are you? I'm to the people there.
Absolutely, all very good. Right, a couple of things, right? Firstly, I mean, the Kagiso Trust has taken up a position and therefore backing this campaign that we're going to play out throughout the whole month around the importance of voting. Now, it seems pretty obvious to me, but what's your take on it in terms of the why we all need to vote, particularly young people?
Look, first of all, let me just make this one statement that the Kagiso Trust itself, I can call it the child of the struggle, like the president called Tintualo, in the sense that Kagiso was formed in order to sustain the struggle for freedom in 1985, when things were bad. So, when we voted in 1984, that was a contribution that Kagiso has done to sustain, to fund NGOs that were opposed to apartheid, that were providing services that the government was not giving, that were providing legal assistance, that was giving bursaries and so on to students. So that's what I'm saying, it's a child of the struggle.
And you continue playing a very important role, therefore, in effectively nation building post the struggle, right?
Yes. So we believe in democracy. All that we are saying is that in voting, remember that there are people who died in order to be where we are. We can't waste our vote or not go to vote for the sake of those people who died fighting for this thing. As I say, the Kagiso Trust, formed by people like the late Emeritus Desmond Tutu, Beas Nodier, the late Dr. Edin Komo, and so on. Dr. Max Coleman, for instance. So people who've had a vision to see that we need an organization that can promote our struggle towards democracy, which we eventually achieved through those organizations that we funded through money that was raised from the European Union, Japanese government, Swedish government, and so on. So for Kagiso Trust, this is the moment that we cherish. We're not saying anybody from us root for something, but to say, remember that there are people who died.
Okay. Tell me more then about the and you call it like hashtag Remember Me campaign. I mean, can you tell me more about what the campaign is all about?
The campaign is about the people remembering to vote. Hashtag Remember Me. And in saying we remember people, those people like Nelson Mandela, Winnie Mandela, and so on, who died, so that we must remember them. Hashtag Remember Me. Remember those people. Remember those people who are still living and contributing towards the society, the democratization of the society, and so on. So that we're just saying, remember. That's what I'm saying. That remember that this thing was not found or received on a silver plate. It was received on the blood and sweat of many people who died for us to be here. That's what he said.
And do you think it'll resonate? Because I mean, we certainly playing the campaign, and thank goodness there's a great collaboration now between SAFM and the Kagiso Trust all throughout this election period, right? So, do you think there's this concept of challenging the audience to say, listen, remember the people who came before you and how they fought to vote, they fought for the right to vote? Do you think that's going to resonate with young people today who may not even remember what these older struggle heroes look like?
Well, it may not resonate with them, but it is our duty to make them understand where we come from, because, of course, young people may not know where we were. For instance, the thing called Apartheid Museum, where they show you the different ways in which apartheid was, with whites only, blacks only, and so on. So we are where we are today for that reason. And, of course, some of the people called the 2000 may not know. But the fact of the matter is that, yes, it's our duty for those who are still living, particularly those who experience, like myself. I was a student in 1976.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, hold that thought for a second, because I want to look at your experience as a student, and then again the collaborations and, nationwide, your emphasis to try and create this awareness around hashtag Remember Me.
Welcome to the SABC TV License Loyalty Program, where your payment isn't just about paying fees. It's about joining a vibrant community of connected viewers. Ready for the journey? Here's your roadmap. Sign up at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za and unlock an instant reward. You'll get an SMS to confirm your registration. Make a 50% or 100% payment to your account for a payment confirmation SMS and a promotional code. Explore our partners' product catalogs for an array of offerings. Receive an SMS voucher for your favorite outlet as the icing on the cake. Don't wait. Dive into a world of benefits. Register now at sabctvlicenserewards.co.za. T's and C's apply. Remember, TV license fees aren't just payments. They make a difference. The students from Fort Hare University have calculated that only a win will elevate them from the bottom half. Meanwhile, Thunderbirds ladies are in dire need of 3 points to escape from the basement. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the queens of the beautiful game, the University of Fort Hare versus Thunderbirds ladies, on Wednesday 1 May at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Right, continue talking about the election and that hashtag Remember Me campaign as part of our election watch feature, brought to you by the Kagiso Trust. My guest is their deputy chairperson, Thabiso Ratshomo. Now, Thabiso, I think a good part about what you just said is, besides remembering icons like Desmond Tutu and Beyers Naudé and Frank Chikane, and we can go through so many others, right, and the Nelson Mandelas of the world, there are other people who may be lesser known, but they've all had a role of understanding that struggle and played a role. So you were giving me your own example before the break. Maybe just share that with us.
Yes, I'm originally from Spokane in the Val, but in 1976 I was studying, I was in matric at Orlando High School when the uprising started. So I experienced them firsthand, and I'm lucky to be alive. I'm one of those people, so I'm lucky to be alive and be a testimony to what we say freedom in our lifetime, because I can experience it, or I experienced it in 1994 when we first voted. It was a momentous experience for us to vote because we're not allowed. The only people who could vote for up to that time were people who were appointed by the puppet regime, the homelands or the councillors, for instance, who were basically operating within government structures. So even for myself, when I voted that time, it was a big experience. And these are what our young people must know, that that's what I'm saying. It was not a silver plate. We fought for this thing to be here. We fought for this vote to be here. We fought for the vote where everybody votes for somebody that he or she cherishes.
Yeah.
You see?
So what do you then say to a person who's listening to us and saying, and particularly a young person who gets the Remember Me campaign, but they not just have voter apathy, they have voter disillusionment because they don't see in the 50 parties that are available for them to vote, they don't see one of them giving them what they want. They want a great future, but they don't see the channels of that future coming through any of the political parties. Well, what do you tell someone like that who then says, I don't think I should vote?
Look, I don't want to vote to campaign for a party. I can only talk about my own experience. My own experience was being introduced to the ANC, for instance, and understanding all the things that it stood for, democracy, freedom charter, and so on. So people are there to look at the manifestos of the organizations and look what they stand for, what they've achieved, and so on. You know, sometimes when you're in the opposition, it's very easy to criticize. Being in government is a difficult thing, and I think the ruling party has achieved a lot compared to what we know. When I studied as a young person, in the same year that I was in matric, there was no electricity. I studied by candlelight.
And you survived. Okay, let's keep the lights on. I think that's very important. Let's leave it at that, but keep the lights in terms of our freedom and justice in our country on all the time. Tabiso Rotsomo, thanks for your time. The Deputy Chairperson of the Kagiso Trust, which he describes as, in fact, the child of the leaders that actually delivered the democracy to South Africa. And many people have an opinion about #RememberMe. What was it like for you, not just in voting the first time, but in your own struggle that we sometimes forget?
This Election Watch feature was brought to you by Kagiso Trust. Follow the #RememberMe initiative. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
There's lots of comment. In fact, we'll chat to Tessa Dooms after 5. I know that for sure now, right? Sometime after 5. From Project Glenn, we've got, we need to put those politicians in a boxing ring tournament so that they fight for a position in Parliament. We all know that they are making are promises, but they can't live to the expectations. I tell you what, the way some of them argue in these political rallies, you would think that they are in boxing rings, believe me. Another one, okay, I'll look at some of the others. I'm not clear what that says, but keep those messages coming as well. Let's get to the anonymous truck driver now. Wants to comment on the polygraphs. Hello, anonymous.
Good afternoon, Ashraf Garda.
Yes, good afternoon.
Dear listeners, my pulse is racing.
Okay, why?
No, I feel that, Mr. Munare is being targeted, right? Mainly because when you apply for a position, especially in a big company like SABC, you would have did the right things and, got all these credentials all in order. After 2 years now, there was a gentleman from SABC that was speaking and says, no, the vetting process was put on hold because he didn't want to take the polygraph test. I mean, you being the HR or so for the company, that's the first thing you sort of for your ideal candidate for the position. Not after 2 years, and not when it's near election time. And secondly, if I'm not sure, but polygraph testing is normally not admissible in court. Am I right in
Well, we're going to get all the answers on that in terms of the legality of all of that just now, okay? Well, I mean, if it's not permissible in court, then why would you have a polygraph just in the first place? But in terms of the gentleman who spoke earlier, is not from the SABC, that's from Media Monitoring Africa. That's William Bird who spoke. We will get Michael Markovich to speak to us just now. He's the former board member of the SABC, so he's not there any longer, but clearly he's got an insight into all the things that you've raised that I think we need to touch on, and we'll cover that later on. Thanks for that call, anonymous truck driver. Thanks for that. Right, let's then wrap up that conversation before we get to the news by this, and it's really linked to all the things we spoke about earlier on. Archbishop Desmond Tutu was vilified by the apartheid government and had his passport confiscated. Now, we know that, right? But he kept struggling for freedom, and after voting on the first democratic election in 1994, he said it felt so good. It was like falling in love. I can imagine. On May the 29th, the Kagiso Trust hashtag Remember Me initiative encourages South Africans to honour Tutu's memory by exercising the right to vote. On the right, in this case, he fought so hard for the right to vote. Let's get the news now. It's 5 o'clock.
Thank you, Ashraf. More reaction to SABC vetting in top French actor questioned by police. Good day to you. The Executive Director of the Campaign for Free Expression, Anton Harbour, says the SABC's Head of News and Current Affairs, Mashresha Munare's independence is of critical importance. He was commenting after the presidency disputed weekend reports that Munare was being targeted ahead of the elections. Presidency spokesperson Vincent Pankwenya said at a media briefing earlier that all executives at the public broadcaster were subjected to a vetting process. Harbour says the presidency needs to do more.
It's good that they've said he's not being targeted, but I don't think it's enough. What they need to do is call off the SSA and re-look at the strange policy that requires journalists to be subjected to scrutiny by the SSA, intrusive scrutiny, unnecessary scrutiny, and what looks, because of the timing, as suspiciously like pre-election harassment. It comes 2 years after he joined the SABC and started the job. It comes shortly after this incident where SABC ran audio of the president speaking behind closed doors when he was saying that they're going to challenge any media that's too critical of the ANC.
Mino Munane questioned who made the decision that he be called to take part in a polygraph test at the State Security Agency just weeks before the May elections. He was speaking on the SABC's news channel. He's reiterated his position that he doesn't have a problem with the vetting of senior staff at the public broadcaster.
Whatever we do in our newsroom is in the context of media freedom, and therefore I did not understand why state security agents would want to conduct a polygraph test on me. And even then, I said to them, can you put it in writing, the rationale, the reasons, and who made the call? The supervisor of that agent called me to say, look, the client, not us as state security, make that kind of call. It's not us who. And I said, who is the client? I'm still waiting for that answer to say, who's the client who make that call?
The High Court in Johannesburg has sentenced a mother of a toddler to 25 years in prison, and her boyfriend has been handed life imprisonment. 24-year-old Rochelle Botha and her 37-year-old boyfriend Stefan van Niekerk were found guilty of the murder of 2-year-old Siobhan Rush. Acting Judge Annalene Africa handed down the judgment.
Accused 1, you are effectively sentenced to 25 years direct imprisonment. In respect of accused 2, considering that the prescribed minimum sentence in respect of counts 3 and 8 is life imprisonment, the sentences so imposed in respect of counts 4, 5, 6 and 7 will, in terms of section 39 bracket 2 bracket A I of the Correctional Services Act, run concurrently with the sentences of life imprisonment.
The deadline to submit comments on the suitability of candidates nominated for the position of Chief Justice of South Africa and Deputy President of the Supreme Court of Appeal is drawing closer. The Office of the Chief Justice, in a statement, sent out a reminder to law bodies, members of the public and other interested institutions to make their comments. Kani Mapanga reports.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has informed the Judicial Service Commission that he is considering appointing Deputy Chief Justice Mandisa Maya to the position of Chief Justice. Ramaphosa is also considering chairperson of the Electoral Court, Justice Dumsani Zondi, for the position of the Deputy President of the SCA. Both candidates have accepted their nominations and all comments must reach the Secretariat of the JSC by no later than Thursday, the 2nd of May 2024. Kenny Mapanga, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The French actor Gérard Depardieu has been questioned at a Paris police station after being placed under formal investigation over 2 allegations of sexual assault. He's denied any wrongdoing. The BBC's Paul Moss has more.
He's already facing a charge of rape. Now Gérard Depardieu is having to answer formally another accusation that he assaulted actresses on 2 film sets in 2014 and 2021. But this has hardly come out of the blue. More than a dozen women have claimed that Depardieu molested them, and it's become a deeply divisive topic in France. Last year, more than 50 celebrities wrote an open letter saying that to attack Gérard Depardieu was to attack art itself. Critics argued this just showed how sexual abuse is still tolerated in France.
The top story, the executive director at the Campaign for Free Expression says the SABC's head of news and current affairs, Moshoeshoe Monare's independence, is of critical importance. That's SAFM News. I'm Greg Khus.
Coming up in your sports this hour, fixture change for Sundowns again and familiar faces return to Springbok women's squad for the Africa Cup. More details at 5:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is queuing towards Crown Interchange. The N3 southbound in Germiston has a crash near Rand Airport Road reported. Baysnodeer Drive in Rand Park Ridge is queuing at Easterhood Drive. In Midrand, the N1 northbound has a stationary vehicle after Olifantsfontein Road, and Pretoria Main Road northbound is queuing towards Olifantsfontein Road. In KZN, the N3 westbound is slow moving towards the M13 Paradise Valley. The N2 northbound has a stationary vehicle after Spaghetti Junction. The N3 outbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The M7 westbound is queuing towards Bel Air Road, and the N3 in Estcourt has roadworks with traffic restrictions near the Fera exit. In Cape Town, Mike Pina Boulevard northbound in Parow is slow moving towards Frans Conradi Drive. Waltervreden Drive in Mitchells Plain is closed between Cedar Avenue and Spine Road, and Brighton Road in Kraaifontein is slow moving at the N1 highway. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 106.6 FM in Bloemfontein. The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda on SAFM. You're listening to the National Pulse. Weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
I tell you what, every day, the things that get our national pulse racing or boiling changes, naturally so. I mean, today it's about the IFP campaign using the voice of former leader, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, urging you to vote as if he is very much alive. So it's in the present tense. That's one. Then the election posters, just so many being defaced. Number 2. Then there's been this conversation that we've had around the issue we're going to talk to in a moment or two, not quite now, just now, in fact, with Tessa Dooms, around the IEC and the MK party, and what does this mean in terms of the regulations around the IEC for registering of parties. We must talk about that, but we certainly must talk about what's going on regarding the issue of state security and the SABC, and it's been covered all throughout the news bulletin. So with me is Michael Markovits, who's the head of the Gibbs Media Leadership Think Tank, and does great work there, but also former SABC board member. Michael, good chatting to you, and welcome. You're live on the National Pulse.
Thank you, Ashraf. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Right. So, in fact, before we continue, just to give some background. So we had a chat earlier on to to William Bird from Media Monitoring Africa about just this same issue, which is the issue that we understand state security have now and possibly written or advised they needed to get the SABC head of news to deliver on a polygraph test, and maybe a few other questions they need to be asking now, and a whole lot of insinuations around that part, his credibility, but also, as William Bird has suggested, it could also be seen as potentially meddling in SABC news affairs now with just 1 month to election term. Having said that, I chatted to William, and you need to hear the full podcast of that conversation. But one thing I asked him, this issue of specific requirements for SABC leadership, the actual heads, executive heads, right? Is that a first time thing, or is that a common thing that's been done over many years, over many administrations? And he said this.
So what has happened in previous elections was with the previous editor-in-chief, Patricia Magopane, who's now on the board. She had to complete some forms for security vetting, which she did, and there was no issue with that. What Mr. Monare did, as I understand it, is he also completed those forms. But what hasn't happened before is that they're coming out with this nonsense of that you need a higher clearance, that you need to do a polygraph test, and some 2 years into the job. So as far as we're aware, this is certainly a first, and certainly something that we should be deeply and profoundly outraged and concerned about.
Okay, what are you concerned about?
Well, I think the thing is no editor has to go through and be security vetted. What is the purpose of that? It sounds like it's a means of intimidating the editor-in-chief, a means of saying we're watching you, expecting him to complete a polygraph test. That seems to suggest some kind of incident or idea of wrongdoing. Ordinarily, why would you ask someone to do a lie detector test? Unless you've got some kind of a hearing or some other process that you may possibly find that for, it's just outrageous. So this kind of thing is designed to have a chilling effect on media freedom. For that to happen to the head of news at the public broadcaster, which is the biggest broadcaster in the country, for it to happen to that same head of news 4 weeks ahead of elections is very, very fishy indeed, and it's just something that is profoundly worrying for our democracy. The head of news and everyone at SABC should be focused on how do we deliver, free, fair, accurate, credible coverage of elections, not, should or shouldn't the head of news be subjected to security vetting. It's just ridiculous.
Right, Michael Markovich, you've certainly heard that from William Bird of Media Monitoring Africa. He said many things, but the key point, this kind of thing is designed to have a chilling effect on the running of SABC News. Do you concur with that?
Yes, I do, Ashraf, and good afternoon to your listeners. I must just say that, when we were on the board in 2017 to 2022, there was a request or even expectation that editorial staff or the journalists at the SABC could also be subject to the security vetting. And we got a legal opinion in 2018 which said any vetting of editorial staff would be unlawful. Now, Mr. Monari is in two positions, really, in a sense, which he obviously holds at the same time. One is he's a group executive of news and current affairs, so he's part of the executive of the organization. And it's quite possible, and from the reports it seems that the executives are vetted before they take the job or before the job is finalized, and apparently he did that. But most importantly, Ashraf, he's also the editor-in-chief. And it's in that context that I think, let's leave aside that he might have been vetted when he got the job, but any further vetting and mid-term vetting seems to be a bit odd, because if you vetted before, why are you suddenly being vetted again in the mid-term? So it seems a bit odd. I'm just going on the reports of what I've read in City Press and what William Bird has said, but it seems to be really irregular. And I also think, vetting, in my view, should be of people that are in charge of critical security-related roles in sort of critical infrastructure like the SABC. I don't know if you remember, there used to be an act called the National Key Points Act. SABC is a National Key Point that was repealed, and now there's something called the Critical Infrastructure Act, which is an update of that. And if you look at that act, the real security vetting is required for the head of security of these types of organizations, or the security provider, the security personnel that you see every day at the SABC, that company would be vetted because clearly they have a role to do with the security of the critical infrastructure like the SABC. I don't think normal employees, and certainly not journalists and editorial staff, should be subjected to this kind of very intense security vetting. And sorry, Ashraf, I need to make the point in case listeners think that I'm suggesting that employees should not be vetted at all before they take a job at the SABC. Everyone in every job has their qualifications checked, has their credit record checked, and has, if they've got any criminal record. I mean, that's 101 hiring for any job. But what we're talking about here is a much more intense, granular vetting process which asks questions about your health, your past life, your relatives, etc., etc. And it's really invasive, and certainly it's completely out of kilter in terms of the way I understand the principle of what journalists have to do and how this type of invasiveness could affect their ability to do their job.
Right. So if you think it's out of character and you disagree with it, and it does come from state security, I mean, two things there. The fact that it comes from state security, how significant is that? And then what do you think, and I know you're guessing on this one, what would their motive be?
Well, firstly, I'm just going, as I said, I'm reading what was apparently a leaked recording of a meeting of SABC journalists when Mr. Minari told them what had happened. So that's what I'm going on. But assuming that is correct, it seems like it sounded quite an arbitrary thing at first, but obviously it cannot be arbitrary when you're dealing with the head of the SABC News, and therefore I think it does need to be investigated. Mr. Minari said he did make a complaint to the Inspector General, and I think that's the right way to go because obviously it needs to be explained. There are many, many questions that need to be asked, but certainly the first question I would ask is why in the middle of his term, of his appointment, 2 years into the appointment, but 1 month before election, out of the blue, he suddenly is required to do another vetting and a polygraph test. So those are the questions that have to be asked.
Now, I mean, you know and I know a lot has happened in the SABC in the last decade or so. I mean, I haven't been here for 5 years, but the period before you got on board, I mean, we had Claudia Motsoneng leading the SABC. There were so many issues, so many accusations, counter-accusations, and central to all of that, right, is not the music and the other things, is who controls the news, right? What then are your thoughts around just that, the ability for the SABC, in this case here, to deliver independent, thought-provoking news throughout the year, particularly in an election year, so that we are a trustworthy institution that the audience can hang on to?
Well, you know, the thing is, Ashraf, we passed editorial policies in 2020 after a long public consultation process. And I think we should be proud of those editorial policies because it really entrenches the editorial independence of the SABC and all of those different types of issues that could come into play, the political interference, all of that is dealt with and obviously outlawed as a practice within the newsroom. I've got great confidence that the current SABC News, and has been over the past, and remember we also had a 2019 election, 2021 election at SABC, through monitoring by civil society, came through a review of their coverage of both of those elections, Ashraf, as very balanced and very fair. I have no reason to doubt that the SABC News won't do exactly the same now. And of course, there's always mechanisms. People got an issue with SABC News, like any broadcast or any news. There are self-regulatory bodies like the Broadcasting Complaints Commission or the Press Council. So it's not like there's an unaccountable news. So it's absolutely not. SABC is there. It's open, and ultimately, I've got faith in them to do the job. We have moved on, hopefully, from those terrible times where there was brazen interference and political interference in editorial independence. And I think that the editorial policies and hopefully, the governance has certainly improved with the SABC, I would say. And I've got a lot of belief that the SABC News will cover this election fairly. And really, I think a lot of these questions that we're asking now need to be answered by other people who are involved.
Understand, and I think, we've had two angles in the story we need to run with, and we will certainly cover it even further, no question about that. But here's the last thing. You made the point that in terms of the board investigating this issue, the principle of the issue a few years ago in your time there, right, that legally you found it was illegal, it could not be enforced, right? Therefore, I know you're out of the board now. Would you, if you were asked to advise the board even now, what would you advise them?
I wouldn't want to be so arrogant as to say I would advise them, but I would just refer to the fact that there was an opinion in June or July 2018 on the vetting of editorial staff, and that opinion deals with why it would be unlawful to do so and would not survive legal challenge. While the laws may have changed, I think that principle of editorial staff not being vetted in this very invasive way should remain. As I said, Mr. Monari is in a position where he's both an executive and editor-in-chief, but the fact that he's editor-in-chief is the most important part to consider here, and that's the most concerning part in relation to the calls that he got when he was summoned to meet the SSA.
Absolutely. And linked to that is, again, there are perceptions across the board from many people saying they're completely within their rights. What's wrong with that? But for many of us on air here, I think the issue of editorial integrity, particularly the SABC of the last 5 years and beyond, I think is critically important. And now that we are entering, we're very much into election season. Michael Markovitz, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Much appreciated. Now, let's do this. I'm going to play a clip from Vincent Magwenya, who gave this comment. Of course, he represents the presidency. He said this.
The vetting process does not cover practicing journalists or reporters at the SABC. Mr. Monara is not a reporter at the SABC. He is an executive. Upon his appointment, Mr. Monara gave consent to the vetting process and completed the form that was furnished to him and went further to submit some, but not all of the information that was required. The process was then stalled when Mr. Monara did not want to submit himself to a polygraph test, which is part of the vetting process. Consequently, the vetting of Mr. Monare was never completed. The process that started in 2022, when he joined the SABC, has not been completed due to his aversion of the polygraph test, which is only one element of the broader vetting process. The presidency is also informed that the new SABC Group Chief Executive, Ms. Nomsa Chabeli, is currently going through the same vetting process, and that the current board of directors of the SABC went through a similar vetting process. President Ramaphosa or any part of his administration will never sanction acts of intimidation or harassment of journalists.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Okay, that was the voice of Vincent Magwenya. Well, I'll tell you what. Well, you tell me what you think about this issue. I mean, if anything's going to get your pulses racing one way or the other, this is a conversation that we must be having. So you tell me what you make of it. We'll chat with Tessa Dooms in a moment regarding, the IEC and what's come out of the MK party. Just some lessons to learn around that. So we'll get to her right after this.
The students from Fort Hare University have calculated that only a win will elevate them from the bottom half. Meanwhile, Thunderbirds ladies are in dire need of 3 points to escape from the basement. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch the queens of the beautiful game, the University of Fort Hare versus Thunderbirds ladies, on Wednesday 1 May at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Any person aggrieved by any political advertisement or political election broadcast that is broadcast by SAFM may lodge a complaint within 5 days from broadcast with the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA. To lodge your complaint, please contact ICASA's Compliance Department via telephone number on 012-568-3233. That's 012-568-3233. Or email broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. That's broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. Alternatively, complaintsccc@icasa.org.za. That's complaintsccc@icasa.org.za.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Okay, so it's been a busy time for the IEC. It's also been a busy time for the MK party. You know, in, out, suspended, expelled, and then accusations around the fact that many members of the MK party have been registered illegally, so to get the numbers required to be able to contest their first ever election. So let's try and understand it, what's happened, but also the role of the IEC and are there holes they need to close up? Let's get the thoughts of Tessa Dooms, who's a political analyst and director of the Rivonia Circle. Tessa, good chatting to you as always. You're live on the National Pulse.
Hi, thank you for having me, Ashraf.
Thank you. So firstly, what do you understand by what has happened around the issue of, forged or irregular registration within the numbers of people required for the MK party?
Well, there's an accusation that one of the MK party members in the Western Cape has come forward to say that he and others have forged signatures that were required for the MK party to be able to contest on the ballots. Now, this comes from on the back of the new electoral laws that do state that parties that are not represented in Parliament that want to be on the ballot need to collect between 15,000 signatures if they want to be on the national ballot only, and all the way up to about 60,000 if they want to be on the national and all of the 9 provincial ballots. And so the IEC requirement is that a party would get the names, the ID numbers of registered voters, and then their signatures. What the person who is coming from the MK party is saying is that they got names and ID numbers from databases and forged the signatures. So those are accusations that have been made that are yet to be tested or proven. And of course, this is also somebody who has been expelled or suspended from the MK party. There's no clarity on that, which also raises questions about the veracity or credibility of those claims. But that is what has been put up to question, and now the IEC needs to be able to answer as to what they will do in response to these allegations.
And has the IEC said anything? Have they commented on this busy Monday?
So we haven't seen official comment from the IEC in the form of a press statement. We've seen a response that they gave to the Mail and Guardian, which was a generic response that said they have not gone through any formal processes of checking the legitimacy of each signature. They have checked that the ID numbers are of registered voters, but they do not have a mechanism to check that the signatures are from the people from those ID numbers. And also that they think it's the responsibility of Parliament to deal with the question of forgery rather than theirs. That is as much as they've said in a passing comment. We've not seen a formal statement or press conference from them on these issues. The EFF, incidentally, has also raised questions about Bosa signatures and whether those are legitimate. So I think the IEC's got now multiple issues that have been brought to its table around the questions of signatures in the last week.
So, you made the point that the accusations around these being forged signatures come from an aggrieved member. So we just parked that aside, right? Which meant if that person didn't do his own form of whistleblowing, then we would not know about this. So what does that then say about the checks and balances of the IEC regarding or any signatures?
Well, I think questions need to be asked of the IEC about what processes they have followed. it is an extraordinarily large number of signatures that would have come from over 100 parties that had submitted. So I do think it does raise questions about what the IEC's processes are, and I think the best thing and the most responsible thing for all of us to do is ask for these questions of the IEC and ask for them to give us answers. It is important that we know that all of the parties that are participating are doing so credibly, and it is important that everybody feels that way before the election, so we don't go into an election and find ourselves after the fact with these issues still lingering. The IEC does have a responsibility to deliver a credible, trusted process, and the signature requirement, although the time for the signatures is passed, in terms of the timetable of the election, it is still something that should be of concern to the IEC if things like these are raised, which means they must respond to it. I think anything beyond that is conjecture and is not helpful. We don't know the IEC's processes, so we must ask of them what their processes are. We've seen a number of political parties, up to about 11 court cases to the Electoral Court, questioning the IEC on its processes, and the IEC has won all of those court cases except the one on the MK, on the candidacy of Jacob Zuma that they're now taking to the Concord. So they clearly have shown that they are willing to answer those questions in a court of law, and I think that they should be willing to do so in the court of public opinion as well.
And I mean, certainly we'll get hold of the IEC, if not today, then tomorrow, different angles. So here's the last thing to you, Tessa. It is understandable that we're going to get people calling in and texting us and tweeting us and saying, you see, this puts such a cloud around our elections, not just this one, but so many other cases. What are your thoughts? I understand from arm's length here, right, around the overall credibility of the IEC in terms of its sense of fairness, but also in its ability to deliver a free and fair election.
Well, we are now in our 7th election that we're going into, and the IEC has not given us a reason in the 6 previous national elections, the 5 previous local elections, or the by-elections that have been there. We've also had the backup of the Electoral Court to help us, and in this instance, the IEC is going even a step further to the Concord. And so I think the best that we can ask for in an election is credibility that is shown through transparency, a willingness to answer, a full disclosure in terms of information. And I think it's also up to political parties and members of the public, if they feel aggrieved on an issue, to be able to make those issues transparent, provide evidence, and for the IEC to be tested about that in a public way. I think that that in itself is about credibility. The IEC's willingness to still engage shows that there's still transparency and credibility. And I think until we've reached a point where we feel like the IEC is disengaged or is being disingenuous, I think we shouldn't be bemoaning the election's credibility unless we have real solid evidence that the IEC is no longer playing ball. The IEC is not shied away, and I think it's up to us and the media and everyone to ask the right questions and demand these responses so that we can create a sense of calm and that people can trust that the IEC is doing their level best. These are new processes. They were not created by the IEC. They were created by Parliament as rules and processes. And so the IEC is trying to make those processes work at a practical level, given the time that the President has set for when the election is.
Okay, and I think that is a point well made. Tessa Dooms, thanks for your time. As always, the director of the Rivonia Circle, but also a political analyst, an important voice here in the build-up to election 2024. Let's get the news headlines now. Here's Greg House.
Quick look at the headlines. The SABC News Group Executive Moshoeshoe Munare says he would like an explanation about why he should undergo a polygraph test at the State Security Agency just weeks before the elections. The father of Siobhan Rush, the 2-year-old child beaten to death by her mother and her boyfriend, has called for the return of the death penalty. And Venezuela's opposition coalition says 3 more activists have been detained, the latest arrests of opposition members ahead of the July elections. There's a full update at 6 o'clock.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good afternoon. Starting off in Gauteng, the N12 westbound in Alberton has a stationary vehicle at the R59 Reading interchange. The M1 southbound in central Johannesburg is queuing towards Crown interchange. The N3 southbound in Germiston has a crash near Rand Airport Road. Baysno Deer Drive in Rand Park Ridge is queuing at Azaho Drive. In Midrand, the N1 northbound has a stationary vehicle after Olifantsfontein Road, and Pretoria Main Road northbound is queuing towards Olifantsfontein Road. In Pretoria, Steve Biko Road northbound is queuing towards Wonderboom Pass. Solomon Mhlangu Drive northbound is queuing towards the N4 highway, and Eskom Pathleli Drive northbound is queuing towards Mabopane Highway. In KZN, the N3 westbound is slow moving towards the M13 Paradise Valley. The N3 outbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. The N7 westbound is queuing towards Bel Air Road, Wakesley Road Junction. The N2 northbound is queuing towards the M41 Gateway exit, and the N3 inbound is queuing towards Spaghetti Junction. In Cape Town, the M5 northbound queuing towards the N1 Koeberg interchange. The N2 Nelson Mandela Boulevard outbound is queuing towards Hospital Bend. The M3 Philip Hosana Drive outbound is queuing towards Hospital Bend, and the N1 outbound queuing towards the M5 Koeberg interchange. With your traffic update, I'm Irma G.
This is SAFM Sports with Duming Kapele.
Right. Are you waiting for me?
I am.
The whistle is blown. That means you can start the game. Go ahead.
We start things off with football. Mamelodi Sundowns have another change to their DStv Premiership schedule. Just last week, the game against Kaizer Chiefs, which was supposed to be played tomorrow, has been moved to Thursday to allow the Brazilians to take on TS Galaxy tonight. And the kick-off is at 7:30 at Loftus Versfeld. Then after Sundowns clash against Stellenbosch FC in the Nedbank Cup semi-final on Sunday, instead of playing Royal AM on the 7th of May, they take on Golden Arrows a day later at the Mpumalanga Stadium. And then there will be a new date for the Royal AM clash. So basically, Sundowns crashing out of the CAF Champions League has somehow helped their bumper-to-bumper schedule. Elsewhere, Liverpool expect Mohamed Salah to remain at Anfield next season. The 31-year-old will enter the final year of his contract at the end of the season. And there has been renewed speculation about a potential move to Saudi Arabia. However, Salah hasn't given any indication that he wishes to leave Liverpool, or if Liverpool are actually planning on selling him. Then in rugby, experienced Springbok women's player Nomawetu Mabenge, Lusanda Dumke, and Sizopila Solisindi have been included in the national squad for the Rugby Africa Women's Cup in Madagascar next month, where the qualification for the 2025 Rugby World Cup in England is at stake. Springbok women head coach Louise Kuhn named a squad of 28 players here, where South Africa will be up against Cameroon, Kenya, and Madagascar for the title as champions of Africa. And the trio were among the 16 players that travelled to Madagascar last year. In cricket, captain Kane Williamson will play at his 6th T20 World Cup in June after New Zealand named an experienced 15-man squad today. The tournament, to be hosted in the United States and the West Indies from the 2nd to the 30th of June, will be Williamson's fourth as a captain. The batsman leads a squad including New Zealand's Test captain Tim Southee, who will be taking part in his 7th T20 World Cup, and Southee has taken a record of 157 T20 international wickets, and he spearheads the attack alongside seasoned pace bowler Trent Boult, who will be playing in his 5th T20. Seam bowler Matt Henry and batting all-rounder Rashin Ravindra are the only players in the squad who have not played in a previous T20 World Cup. And then finally in boxing, British heavyweight Anthony Joshua says that he expects to fight at Wembley Stadium in September. The 34-year-old stopped Francis Ngannou in March in his last fight, his 4th win in a row. Matchroom are currently planning an event at Wembley, and Joshua said that it would be either on the 20th or the 21st of September. Well, with that said, it is a wrap from my side for SAFM Sport.
Okay, that's it. So we'll talk tomorrow.
Tomorrow it is.
And Sundowns and their money. Did we discuss it? How much do they make?
So it's like around 50 billion. The prize for the Club World Cup, whoever wins it, is around 50 billion rands in rands.
Okay, but listen, we'll take 5 billion, for example, even if you finish up 8th or whatever, I don't know. All right, Mamelodi Sundowns making some money even when they're losing. There we are.
Economic news on SAFM. Facts and figures you can count on.
Right, in fact, we'll take some calls as well, because we need to do that. And we'll take, and by the way, feel free to tweet as well. Tag SFM Radio on the X platform, but use the hashtag The National Pulse. You can tag me as well, Ashraf Garda, on Facebook as well as on Twitter. We'll pick it up immediately. Then to call in. Some people have said we tend to forget the number, but you must save this number. It's really important, okay? Because you use it all the time, don't you? So to call in 086 000 2032. And then WhatsApp, you have got 2 options, to voice note or to text us 0614 104 107. By the way, Play Africa, they have won an award, a global award, and I think there's another one that's coming today. So we're going to talk to them just as part of, looking at aspirational things in South Africa. Just before we wrap up the show, looking forward to that, okay? But right now, as always, we do around this time, we talk business, we talk money in big times, and Jimmy's with us with the Money Web Market Update. Jimmy, hi.
Good afternoon, Ashraf. How are you?
I'm very good indeed. I trust you had a lekker weekend?
It was okay. It was a quiet weekend. Usually over the weekend, you try and have a quiet weekend, and then things happen internationally that then affect how our week plays out, especially on the business side of things. So it was nice to not have that happen for a change.
So quick question to you, and we're not going to labor the point, right? How much time do you spend chasing business news globally on a Sunday, keeping in mind by the time, even Sunday night, I mean, the US markets and anything on the west of South Africa is still like Sunday morning, but on the other side, Singapore and the Asian countries would be like very, very, very early Monday morning.
So typically it varies from time to time depending on what the news is. Most of the time you keep up with Asian markets around 3 to 4 in the morning, and then US markets sort of until 10, 11, 12-ish at night. Over the weekend, most of the time you're on the X platform, the updates sort of get thrown your way, and it's just about keeping an eye on that because the next day someone is going to report on them. So it varies on the type of information, but I think once you're in that cycle and you're in that, you sort of know Asian news, this comes out. London news, this comes out. US time, this comes out. And it's easier over time to keep up with it. And that's certainly what we hope to achieve. But it doesn't get any easier as you go through it.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Catch your breath, and we'll get to the markets after this.
The University Registrar and Secretary to Convocation, Dr. Joel Baloy, cordially invites all members of the University of Venda Convocation to attend the AGM on Saturday, 11 May 2024 in Polokwane, Meropa Hotel at 10:30. The AGM will consider the Vice-Chancellor State of Campus Report, the President of Convocation Report, and amendments to the Constitution of the Convocation. To RSVP and confirm attendance, please visit www.univen.ac.za/announcements or contact Mr. Mashuda Ramarebo on 060-906-1902.
SABC Sport is proud to bring you the best polo match on television screens. Watch the South African national polo teams take on the best from around the world. First on the annual fixture is the eagerly awaited international battle at the Nedbank International Polo on Saturday, 11 May 2024 from 1:30 p.m. Watch live on SABC Sport as Argentina, the best of the Americas, face off with South Africa, the best of Africa. Catch the build-up, the international match, and the prize-giving ceremony on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM. SAFM.
Okay, Jimmy, over to you.
So we've got quite an interesting show today. We're going to be looking at some mining updates. Last week we got that bid from BHP, or that offer from BHP to Anglo that was subsequently very swiftly rejected by Anglo. I'm going to be speaking to Anchor Capital around that and the state of the mining sector. We've had a couple of other mines announce Section 189 restructurings as well as retrenchments or potential retrenchments. And I just thought it might be worthwhile to look at such a cornerstone contributor towards the economy and what that means for the state of mining in South Africa and whether there's an investment case there or not. And then we've also got a conversation with Cliff Decker-Hofmeyer around the changes that are coming for those employers that are employing foreign nationals and what employers need to know around this. So we're going to speak to legal experts around immigration and employment practices. I think it's important if we look at where we stand as a country with the amount of South Africans and foreign nationals and the employment conversation that's been happening for a number of years, that we just look at some of the implications for employers depending on who they are electing to hire. And then I've got a conversation with an independent analyst around the state of some SOEs. The Takatso deal fell apart with SAA. We saw that the Transnet privatization deals haven't gone through as planned. So I thought, why not look into the privatization conversation? The government of South Africa has on numerous occasions told us that they want the private sector to help them implement things, and yet every time we see a privatization deal or a privatization collaboration, they don't get too far. They don't get off the ground very quickly. So I thought, why not look at that and see what's happening there? And then because it's Monday, we've got personal finance. We're taking a look at the value of an advisor in your retirement planning. But before we get to those conversations, markets have had a good day. The Rand has had a good day. The Rand is below 18 Rand 70. It is shocking, but we're going to take it as a win. And Henko Kreer has been keeping an eye on the markets for us. He joins me now to just do a quick summary of those market movements throughout the day. Good afternoon, Henko. Thanks as always for keeping an eye on the markets. What do we make of the Rand at 1864?
Oh, I like it, Jimmy. Good evening to you, and hello, Ashraf, and to me. Good evening to all the listeners. Yes, Jimmy, and together with that, it was more or less a green day all around the world, because on US stocks, we see that the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, and the Nasdaq each trading about 0.3% stronger at this stage. And then European stocks, they finished quite mixed, with the FTSE 100 in London gaining 0.1% today, but the DAX and the CAC 40 each losing 0.1%. And then referring back to your conversation with Ashraf a bit earlier, if we have a look at Asian stocks, how they finished earlier today, you'll find that the Shanghai stocks as well as the Hang Seng each finished about 0.8% stronger. And then, like you mentioned, we would look at this early in the morning, as well as we would look to Australian markets to get an idea and to gauge as to what direction our local markets will head into during the course of the day. And then lastly, we'll finish off with the US markets, which seems to be finishing in the green at this stage, but they've still got a few hours of trading left. And that's then also what we saw at the end of our day of trading, where the JSE finished 1.4% stronger today at a higher level of 76,456 points. Then the industrial index gained 0.7%, the financial index 1.7% stronger today, and then that resources index looking quite nice, almost gaining 3%, 2.8% to be exact, at the end of the day. Anglo had another terrific day, gaining 3.2%. Then Goldfields finished the day 2.5% stronger. There's also First Rand, 2.3% up today. But there were a couple of losers like Richmond, which lost 1% today. Other companies lost a bit more than that, like Telkom losing 2%, Zoho Sun 1.5% weaker, and Italtal, Sanlam and Oceana each lost 0.5%. But then back to the good news, Amplats had another terrific day, gaining 5.5%. MTN 5.3% up today. Sibanye-Stillwater and Supergroup each finishing 4.5% stronger, and Anglo Gold, Implats and Discovery each finishing 4.2% up. On the commodities market, the price of gold is currently $2,336 an ounce. Silver is trading at $27.25. Platinum, $945, and palladium, $970 an ounce. The price of Brent crude is $87.10 a barrel. And then if we move over to that exchange rate, yes, it's lovely to see, and it's just getting better. Now 18 Rand 64 to the US dollar, then 23 Rand 39 cents to the pound, 19 Rand 99 for a euro, and 12 Rand 22 for an Australian dollar. And the Bitcoin also slipping a bit today and coming down, now sitting at $62,500, and that is 1.2 million Rand. Jimmy, that's how the markets performed today.
Thank you very much for that update, Henku. We're definitely going to be looking at these and other stories. And as we look at that Anglo share price, it's trading at an 11% premium to the offer that BHP had made. So very clear conversation from the market conveying to the BHP board that they feel the stock is undervalued. We'll dig into that and more stories just after 6. For now, Ashraf, back to you and the team.
Well, thanks for that, Jimmy. Yeah, and I'll certainly listen to your show after 6, just so that you know that, right? In the meantime, Archbishop Desmond Tutu was vilified by the apartheid government and had his passport confiscated. You know that story, right? But he kept struggling for freedom. And after voting in the first democratic election in 1994, he said, "It felt so good, it was like falling in love." So on May 29th, the Kagiso Trust #RememberMe initiative encourages South Africans to honour Tutu's memory by exercising the right he fought so hard for, the right to vote.
Freedom Month on SAFM, the month in which we had our first democratic election 30 years ago. This Freedom Month, as we reflect on the progress made thus far, we continue to commemorate the selfless sacrifices made for our democracy and freedom. SAFM, leading the conversation. You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
I will play some of your voice notes. I will take some calls as well before we wrap up the show. But we love to talk about winners. We love to talk about champions. Let's talk to Futhi Mbongwe, who's the MD of Play Africa. Futhi, good chatting to you. You're live on the National Pulse.
Hi, Ashraf. How are you and your listeners?
I'm very good. I'm pretty happy because I hear that Play Africa has won a significant award. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so we were announced as the winner 2 weeks ago on Friday, the 19th of April, out of the 67 applications that were received months ago, about September. So Play Africa was chosen as the finalist and winner of the Transformative Partnership Award. The event was in Germany. It's run by the Collective Leadership Institute. So basically the award recognizes organizations, especially NGOs, that really work well with partnerships and multi-stakeholder relationships, and then we're chosen for our amazing partnerships we've had with Constitution Hill since 2017 and the impact it has had over the years. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. Firstly, what did you have to do? I mean, besides entering, what did Play Africa have to do to so convince the judges to give your organization the nod, like number one in the world?
Yeah, so what happened? So the first part was mostly nominations, and then from the nominations there was like an application form with some details that we needed to fill in terms of how the partnership has made an impact and really how many partnerships were like government, corporate, the community partners that we have had, and just like also the numbers, the impact has had over the years. Then from that short list of about 67 partners, I think about 18 were chosen to go ahead around September last year. Then the second process was like those shortlisted had to send more details of really where they see the partnership going and how to extend that from the others, were to fill in another application form. That's when we were shortlisted to be amongst the 3 top organizations to make it through to the award ceremony that was held in Germany on the 19th of April. And from then on, we just had to attend and see the outcome of if we made it from the 3 finalists. Yeah.
So I've had the privilege of being at Play Africa, which I think is part of the Concord precinct in Braamfontein in Johannesburg, right? You're still there, right? I mean, as one of the many. Tell me, what is it that you do so that the audience will understand fully the work of Play Africa?
Yeah, so Play Africa, we are what is called a children's museum. It's really an amazing or innovative way to actually help kids learn through play. So it could be work on the constitution, democracy, STEM or technology, engineering or math. But everything that we do with kids from birth until the age of 12, we do it using a methodology called learning through play or play-based learning. So that's everything we do. And I think what's also been powerful for this part of the award was that we also also looking to see like how Play Africa has taken some like broad concepts like the Constitution and transforming a space that used to be a former jail to actually make it a place of life and an excitement for kids and a place for learning and a safe space for kids. That was really, I think, the main takeaway from the panel, what they loved about Play Africa and the transformative nature of the work that we do.
So tell me more about, the practical day-to-day work. I mean, because you use the word kids, right? So, I mean, how old are these kids that attend the school, and what do they learn at that school versus any other school around the country that's so different?
Yeah, so we are like a bridge between the schools, the primary schools, and the parents. So what we do is that, for instance, we will working with designers, the schools themselves, and also the curriculum developers. We actually think, okay, if we're to create something that's going to help children learn through play, maybe a concept in like the Constitution or democracy, how can we make it exciting? So we'll then develop a program, but mostly also build a physical exhibit or item that's going to help the children to learn better. So work with kids from birth until the age of 12, but mostly from 3 years to 12. That's when they engage with the exhibit, and then the little ones work with supporting the mothers and also fathers. But I think what's unique as an example, if we say we're teaching democracy or the rule of law, instead of doing it in much more academic, rigid way, we actually, for instance, have built like a mock-up children's courtroom where kids can take on different roles in the court in a playful manner, but they learn about how the court proceedings work and how you can actually express your voice to actually have your rights being recognized. Then in addition, we get them to go into an actual constitutional court to actually make sure their learning can also be as practical as possible. That's just one example, but it could be on any other topic, science, technology, and maths, but the principle is that we work like that. So when kids come to the space as field trips or families, they'll engage in all these variety of exhibits from the different learning areas through play.
Okay, and I take it that the proof is in what happens to those learners in school at Play Africa and when they leave, right? In terms of how they grow up and how they then have a clear edge.
Definitely. And I think for us, what's been an amazing thing also that the schools share with us is that, of course, schools have to also adhere to the lesson plans, the curriculum. So sometimes it leaves less room for creativity or like creative thinking. So what we actually do is that we will supplement that by supporting the children to actually do some really curious, explorative types of learning so they can actually try things out. They don't have to get them right or like maybe we're not marking them in a way. So I think, especially with the kids that we work with for the age they're in, they learn in a much more really effective way where they can test things out, be hands-on and touching. I think for us, that's been the amazing impact. Even teachers would say, oh, that's amazing because you can tap into how different kids learn differently and also tap into their creative mindset. And they're like, oh, I know now I can engage with this child because they don't get to share and express themselves.
Well, there you are. You got us very excited. And there we are. Love dealing with winners, people who are excellent at what they do or champions in their field. And Play Africa has certainly done that. Futhi Imbongwe, thank you for your time. And there we are, winners of that, an important acknowledgement, a global event coming out of Germany, I think it was. The first prize in the inaugural Transformative Partnerships Award. So Futhi, thanks for that. We'll take your calls in a moment.
You're listening to the National Pulse on SAFM.
Right, let's get to, there's a couple of comments. In fact, we're going to get to Vuyiswa first, wants to comment on batting. Vuyiswa, hi.
Here.
I'm very good. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks for the first time after you returned.
Well, I'm delighted that you're on, and hopefully we'll chat.
Yeah, thank
often.
You so much.
Thank you.
I was just wanted to comment on Mushasham Munare.
Yeah.
Yes, issue. Everybody is subjected to vetting. It happens to all of us, in government and elsewhere. So I don't think anyone has a right to complain. This applies to everybody.
Including a polygraph test?
Come again?
Including a polygraph test?
You know what? We all say we are fighting corruption. We all say we want transparency. So I think this is the process to transparency. It has happened to all of us, but we grew up in exile as children. You come back and you're in government. You get better.
Okay, so you're saying we must just chill. That's the way it goes. Thanks for that, Vuyiswa.
There mustn't be a cry like as if it doesn't happen to other people.
Okay.
Or why us?
Got that.
Why not him?
Well, I'll tell you what, we probably need to get more from both the SABC as well as state security on that issue, right? Thanks for that. Let's get another call. Thanks for that call, Vuyiswa. Well, let's get Siyabonga in Durban. Hi, Siyabonga.
Hi, good evening, Ashraf. Thank you for taking my call.
Much appreciated.
Just a quick thought, Ashraf, here. You know, as South Africans, we feel like every time there's about to be elections, we have to go through, again, that kind of emotional blackmail by political parties and politicians. I was wondering to myself, when are we going to be able to really seriously have a situation where we are able to hold all the politicians go to parliament as long as they earn taxpayers' money? We need to know. Maybe we start a movement called Know Your Politician. It's our right. It's our right. Okay, because we need to know, for example, issues of lifestyle audit. Herman Mashaba had suggested that at one point, but politicians shut it down. What is it that they are hiding? And it can be like we are like an abused nation, and no one is held accountable. We seriously, probably, there's got to be serious thought that we put into these NGOs, religious groups, and with the media. Let's get involved. Let's get these guys. We must hold them accountable. We need to know who they are. What are they up to? Because they will tell you all kinds of stories before they are.
Point taken. I'm going to move on because we're out of time. But I think your point is well taken. In fact, I've suggested don't even call them politicians anymore. Call them servant leaders, because that's really what they should be. There's some voice notes I'm going to rush through.
Hi, Ashraf. The matter of the SABC news, I think it's just gone overboard. The media is gone over the limit. See, they're all against the ANC. They're all against the ANC simply because they are captured and don't want to see the ANC winning. So I think it's just blown out of proportion.
Really? The media captured? How are they captured? What's their plans? You're just saying, you're speaking in absolutes, and that's the point I want to make. Election posters? Yeah.
Good afternoon, SFM, and to listeners. It's Sylvan Governor from Durban. Mr. Ashraf, with regard to the election posters, I'd just like to find out, after the elections, what is the turnaround time or the repercussions for the parties to remove these posters from the light poles or advertising or wherever? I'd just like to find out what is the turnaround time to remove these posters after the elections, because sometimes it becomes an eyesore with the rain and all, and becomes torn and scattered all over. I'd like to find out what is the turnaround time after elections to remove these posters.
My thoughts, based upon what I've seen before, it's like never, because they do stay there for a long time. Here's the last one.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ashraf. I want to hit two birds in one stone. Look, in terms of how ready are we are very much ready for the EFF to decide which government must be on the 1st of June. But you can see that ANC is not ready. They're trying by all means. It's either they are threatening the journalists or the media house. They're not happy. They know actually that they are losing this one, and we are more than excited to make history. Seeing ANC coming to power in 1994 and seeing ANC leaving power in 2024. Thank you very much, Bob, Cape Town.
Okay, we'll talk on the 1st of June maybe when you got the results, right? That's the show. You can catch the podcasts of all the things we've done today, SFM Radio on Twitter, but also you can just Google it and go to the SFM Radio website as well. You'll pick up all the podcasts of the big interviews we've done today. We'll do it again tomorrow. It is, after all, the National Pulse. It's 6 o'clock. Here's Greg House.